Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call the August 16th meeting of the Finance Committee budget hearings to order. Would you please call the roll?
All right, Brahman.
Present.
Whiteburn.
Oh, I am here.
Markham.
Okay, we're all here.
The rest will be joining us as the meeting progresses.
Okay, and we do not need a quorum to operate this meeting because we aren't gonna vote on anything. You're just making presentations to us and so on. So we're gonna go ahead and start so that we don't delay you just because some of our members didn't make it here yet. So let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So with that, we're going to welcome the Facilities Management Department to us today, and welcome.
Thank you.
We're gonna have you make your presentation and then we'll ask you questions.
Okay, we'll do our best to answer.
Okay.
Again, I'm Ed Joss, the Director of Facilities Management. I did mention that we brought a big team with us today, but that's in part because we have a very big team, right? Facilities Management, we're at about 215 people in the department. And just a recap of who we are and what we do. We have 3 divisions. We have the FM&O division, the Maintenance and Operations division. We have the Support Services division, and we have the Planning and Engineering division. We're responsible for all the buildings on campus, as well as a handful of satellite buildings, which I think we're right around 40 buildings right now, and right around 2 million square feet of office space. Our vehicle fleet is right about 900 vehicles. So that's why we have so many folks here to help answer whatever questions you may have. I'll let the folks at the table here introduce themselves. I just want to point out too that we have other key members of our team here on the sidelines that can help answer questions if we need some technical details, as well as my good friend Aaron Quittel over there. We had planned on Aaron and I presenting on the same day, but I was on vacation last week, but she was kind enough to join us because of course we work so closely with her and her team, and so much of what we do focuses on sustainability. So Joe, if you want to introduce yourself and your position.
Joe Murphy, I'm the Manager of Facilities Maintenance and Operations.
Stephanie Hunt, Supervisor of FM&O Admin Services.
Hi, Todd Burkle. I'm the Manager of Support Services, which is the vehicle fleet, record retention, mail room, vending machine contract, and the cafeteria.
And I'm Jason Warner. I'm the Manager of Planning and Engineering.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Any questions before we get started? Stephanie is gonna lead us through the slides that we have. Stephanie is, she's probably just wrapping up the toughest 2 months of her year because she, all of the budget stuff funnels through her. She really helps pull this whole thing together. So she's gonna take the lead on walking through the slides and the information. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to stop us. And if not, we'll answer your questions at the end.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So our current department goals and objectives are identified in our headline key performance indicators. Our first KPI is carbon emissions, and we've partnered with the Sustainability Office and are working to reduce our carbon footprint in our campus buildings as well as our county fleet. We are identifying areas for fiscal efficiencies, energy independence, and carbon neutrality by tracking our energy use, fuel consumption, and exploring alternative energy sources. Our next KPI is the ratio of waste recycled versus waste sent to the landfill. Our goal is to increase the amount of recycled waste and decrease the amount of landfill waste. We are able to understand our impact on the environment by tracking this metric. Percent of bids received from minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses is our third KPI. Our goal with this KPI is to increase the number of bids that we receive from diverse vendors. We're actively partnering with purchasing to explore more ways that we can provide more opportunities for minorities, females, and veteran-owned companies to do business with our department. KPI number 4 is regarding the number of employee injuries. Tracking safety-related incidents and employee injuries is vital to our understanding of how our safety programs and procedures are working. This allows us to identify areas of concern and explore opportunities for prevention and additional training. Our 5th KPI is employee training. Safety of every employee is our number 1 priority here with facilities management. To enhance our department culture and safety and continuing education, we're focusing on offering additional opportunities for training to all of our staff. Tracking the number of training hours completed allows us to ensure that all of our team members are up to date with the latest skills, methods, and knowledge. So these are just a few graphs that are gonna go over the different headline KPIs that we have. So this first page, the graphs are highlighting the data that's been collected for energy use with electric and gas as part of our carbon emissions KPI. Then the next page, our graphs are highlighting our carbon emissions KPI by providing data regarding fuel usage among the county fleet. These graphs show the number of vehicles that the county fleet has, as well as how many of those are hybrid or electric for our carbon emissions KPI as well. This page represents all of Oakland County operations and where we stood with emissions in 2018. Through our continued work with the Sustainability Office, we hope to reach a net zero for carbon emissions by 2050. Our next page with graphs represent our KPI data for employee injuries. How are we working to improve performance in our department? Some additional ways that we've used our budget and as well as additional resources such as ARPA funding, we've been able to complete some AV upgrades to our conference room that allowed us the opportunity to repurpose the existing equipment and create a second space for our increase in demand for virtual meetings. Vehicle operations has also been working with IT to transition their to a web-based fleet data system. This system is creating operational efficiencies and will allow them to track their KPI data. Vehicle operations technicians are also receiving training from General Motors currently to obtain the knowledge and skills necessary to service electric vehicles in-house. For operational efficiencies, cross-training of employees has also been taking place with the mail center and record retention staff. And one big win is this year FMNO was able to integrate solar energy technology into our first campus building.
Which building was that?
It's the new, what we're referring to right now as the Sheriff's Office Evidence Storage Facility. It's the old Pontiac Health Center, which is directly across the parking lot from the North Oakland Health Center.
Key budget changes for fiscal year '24. This year, facilities management has made minimal funding shifts or adjustments. Vehicle operations budget revenue estimate has increased due to higher than normal used vehicle prices. They're currently estimating an increase of $100,000 for the gain on the sale of vehicles. And FMNO is requesting one-time capital equipment purchases to improve operational efficiencies, reduce repair costs, and reduce risk of injury due to aging and outdated equipment. Some new initiatives for 2024. Facilities management and the Sustainability Office are working towards new sustainability efforts and goals. And vehicle operations is reviewing the current and future county vehicle fleet to develop a long-term plan for converting the entire fleet to electric vehicles. Our anticipated IT projects. The various divisions of facilities management are anticipating the following IT projects this year. Facilities maintenance and operations is anticipating continued IT support for our building management system, which is CIP funded. Facilities planning and engineering is anticipating the opportunity to select and implement a resource planning software that will aid in staff workload balancing as well as scheduling of projects. And support services is anticipating IT support with their faster fleet database go live in the first quarter of fiscal year 2024, as well as with the installation of the FileNet system for record retention and their new mail metering equipment for the mailroom. We have a few major contracts that are going to be coming up for bid. They include our mechanical engineering, our building automation system consulting engineer, our environmental engineering contract, architectural services, and also the fleet dealer contracts for model year 2024. That concludes the presentation portion, unless Ed has any details he'd like to fill in.
I do not, so we are prepared for, or we're hoping we're prepared for any questions you may have.
Okay, I will open it up to the commissioners first. And I will say that Commissioner Powell, I believe, is on virtually. So if you have a question, Commissioner Powell, just raise your hand. Okay,
Okay.
all right, Commissioner Rahman.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. A few questions. Being a little bit newer to this role, I may ask some simpler questions, but the first question is, does this budget offer you the ability to take care of additional buildings and facilities, including potentially whatever may be coming down the pipeline with this new acquisition?
It does as far as we're concerned, like having the staffing that's needed. One of the things that we had a meeting about this morning is actually adding at least one additional staff member to at least get us through the design and construction of what we need to do down there. So short answer is yes. In future years, years maybe 2-3 from now, we'll have to reevaluate that, but we feel comfortable where we're at right now, yes.
So you think with just one person will be okay for at least the upcoming year?
Yes, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Farbman Group, who is an outside consultant, they're currently working on a contract that will allow them to manage and operate those facilities down there for the next 12 months. That allows us to not have to pull resources from what we're doing now, and then we can focus on, like I said, the planning of what we want to do down there, and then actually implementing the improvements so that we can get to a point of moving staff in.
Okay, thank you. The next question I had is, and Commissioner Markham, you can help me with this. Is it LEED certified by 2030? Is that? Do you remember? I don't remember what the goal was, but if you could refresh my memory on, I guess, what our goal is and where we are on the timeline to achieving that goal.
Yeah, so Aaron, it's 2035, right? That we're looking to be, please, we're looking to be 50%, and then 2050, which is in line with the Paris Accord, right, to be net zero.
Yeah, so it's a greenhouse gas emissions reduction. And so the goal is to have an interim goal of 50% reduction by 2035 and the carbon neutrality by 2050. And just everything that kind of goes with that. That graph that was up earlier with the full greenhouse gas inventory shows where our largest emitters were in facilities and our fleet being the two largest. And so focusing in those areas for greenhouse gas reduction.
Okay, so we are on track then as of right now to hit those milestones for 20.
Yeah, so we last year this past year we agreed to procure 75% of our energy from solar, and because we are a third-party purchaser of our energy, we're not technically DTE customers, and that gets us, so that's going to start in 2028 or 26? 26, excuse me, and that will be 40% reduction. So just that act alone is a 40% reduction, and that's by 26, and then we have that 10% then to achieve between then. Not that we'll start in 26, but
Right.
that's the 10% that we would need to do between.
Got it. So there's not much work to be done between 26 and 35. We're most of the way there.
There's not a lot of work to be done to meet our goal, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Understood,
Yes.
understood.
Very much so,
Yeah.
very much so.
That's better,
Yes.
better phrase, thank you,
Yes,
thank
yes.
you. And then my last question, Madam Chair, so yesterday we heard some presentations from a few of the other departments. And, you know, I wanted to get a better understanding of kind of what would be involved with certain projects. For instance, I know we had heard from our county clerk and had mentioned, you know, things like fire suppression, which I understand is a pretty big undertaking, you know, millions of dollars. A generator as well is something that she had asked for. I know here in our Board of Commissioners auditorium, an ADA compliant bathroom. So things like that, if you could just speak to maybe some of these projects, I'm sure there are many more and the other commissioners may have some other thoughts or ideas as well. But these were just some things that came across our radar just in the last 24 hours. And I didn't know if you had the ability to speak to any of them or a timeline or kind of where we're heading down the road.
Sure. Yeah, so you know, all of the projects that you mentioned are ones that we have been talking about, so they're not new. We, you know, over the past couple of years, we're heavily engaged in a study to help us evaluate, you know, what capital needs we have, right? I think it was since the last budget hearings, we came and gave a presentation to the board on what our findings were, right? And what we found was that for the past several decades, our capital improvement plan didn't quite have the funding that we needed to keep up. And we were aware of that, but you know, there were a lot of things that were being juggled. We now have a holistic view and a prioritized list of the things that, you know, we need to do in the years moving forward. So that's fairly recent, and you know, now that we are where we are with the Pontiac deal, you know, I think our road moving forward is much clearer. And you know, the projects that you mentioned are focused here in the courthouse. And again, these discussions are fairly recent, but you know, our focus is one of the main priorities is the courthouse. So again, you know, keep talking about this tiny little project that we just picked up and added to our list in downtown Pontiac.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that, you know, when we're able to, again, and I see this happening fairly soon, when we're able to take a look at, you know, what other funding is available and where we're gonna be able to allocate that, those are the projects we're gonna get started on. And actually the ADA toilet room in this area, I think, Jason, is one that you have on your list and have funding for now, right?
Yeah, that's in the capital plan right now, so we're working on design of that, which is about 95% complete. We're expecting to bring a resolution to you in December timeframe to approve that within the capital plan to start construction shortly after.
Okay. So potentially Q1 of next year is what we're looking at?
Yep.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Yeah, we heard, like as I mentioned, from the county clerk yesterday, and it sounds like the need is very real in terms of fire suppression and a generator at the least. And part of my question yesterday is, you know, depending on what this new Ottawa Tower is gonna yield for the different departments, you know, whether there's some thought of that may be one of many departments to move. Again, they haven't specified, you know, who's moving or what's moving, but if there's a thought process of maybe putting some of these things in while the building is empty before they can move. Obviously, I would defer, you know, to you and your expertise, but it sounds like that's been an ongoing problem for quite some time for their department.
And if you're referring to, you know, the facility that we'll be moving folks into in downtown Pontiac, for sure. I mean, all the things that you listed are things on our list that will happen before we move anyone in there.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next up, we have Commissioner Smith Charles, followed by Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I wanted to make sure to mention that your faces, minus yours, are not unfamiliar to me and many of us because we sit on EDI and we get to hear your report not once, but sometimes twice in one day. So I feel like today, though, with fresh eyes and talking about budgets, just wanted to peel back a couple layers a little bit here. Appreciate Commissioner Rahman's comments, definitely gonna follow up with those. And allow you to answer before sharing disappointment that perhaps we're just talking about things still. When I think Prosecutor McDonald, some of her lamenting and some of the clerk's lamenting came from like when I first, like my first budget hearing. Probably before that, they did like a 90-day report and they were like, facility, this. So my question is, how closely do you work with those folks in terms of identifying like facility concerns? And then who selects the order? Because I am troubled that the sheriff's office seems to have gotten first. Now, we share a lot of love with Pontiac, so probably if it was in any other city, I'd be a little grieved by it, besides maybe Royal Oak Township. But yeah, how does that ordering work? Because we wanna make sure we're at the table to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, so, not an easy question to answer, but, so if you'll recall, right, going all the way back to how you started the question, look, you know, if you remember, we're looking at almost $1 billion worth of work that we've determined that we need to do. Now, that $1 billion does include new facilities, right, which are more discretionary in nature, but you know, without those, you know, we're still looking at, you know, at least $500 million to $750 million worth of work, right? So as you can imagine, and that's why I said it's a difficult question to answer, it's very difficult to try to manage all of the things that we need to do because we don't have $1 billion sitting around. It's not like, you know, facilities management has $1 billion and we're just gonna, you know, do what we want with it, right? So as funding becomes available to us, then we do take, you know, the first swing at, you know, what we think should be priorities. And those typically, you know, those decisions revolve around, you know, things like safety and things that have, you know, a good return on our investment and, you know, return for the planet. But, you know, I can just tell you based on my experience, you know, even then there's like so many competing projects for the amount of funding that's available that sometimes it's hard to clearly determine, you know, which one is more important than the other. And, you know, the decision isn't always, you know, not even facilities management, right? I mean, we're working with all the stakeholders, you know, the executive leadership team, the different departments, you know, and those, you know, those decisions are very collaborative. You know, we do, to answer, you know, your other question, you know, we do work very closely with the departments. You know, we have a very good relationship with all of them. All of the projects that you've mentioned, we are aware of them. It's not that we are not aware of them. You know, we have an open line of communication with them. They bring to us our needs. Sometimes we discover the needs, you know, before they even do. And we do have a list of those projects that need to be done. You know, we just might not always have the resources that we need to do them now or, you know, or to be doing several of them at the same time.
So allow me to, that leads right into my next question, which was about leading or lagging metrics. How are we determining best use for space? Because once again, hearing from departments and they're like, oh, we have no break room. That's not a 21st century problem. That's like from inception. And it's just, I do understand that you guys are basically flying the plane while building it. $1 billion of deferred maintenance is basically what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, and I just wanna clarify too, like that also includes, like I said, some proposed new facilities, so I wouldn't call it $1 billion worth of deferred maintenance. Might be closer to $500 million worth of
Still a
deferred
lot.
maintenance, but considering that we get we get $5 million a year in our CIP to do, capital improvements, right, you can understand the challenge.
Okay, that's fair. Lastly, I'll land with, do we have housekeeping? Like, is there a housekeeping custodial, pardon me, team? Do they report to you, your department?
They do, so custodial is one of the units that falls under maintenance and operations, which is under Joe's group.
Okay, because maybe I'm too observant, but baseboards, cobwebs, I just feel like that's unacceptable for a world-leading county like Oakland. And I've mentioned it, but I just never really know who to mention it to. And I think that's important in terms of quality assurance checks that we have with our vendors to just make sure that, little things like that maybe could be discussed to sharpen up, tighten up. And I'll leave it at that. I'll let my commissioners ask further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Commissioner, next up we have Commissioner Cavell.
Thanks, Chair. Hey,
Hey.
hi. I have a couple of questions about the budget, just helping me understand it. The facilities maintenance office has a capital outlay expense. And it's going up 200%.
What page and what line item? So
Page 45 in the little book, but it's going up 200% from $20,000 to $65,000, right? So, well, like I don't understand what that means. What is a capital outlay for you guys? Because isn't that your job as capital outlay?
Well, so, and I'm just answering this like in
Sure.
general without knowing the specific of what that's for, but so yes, I mean, we do manage the capital improvement program, but the capital outlay I think that you're referring to is different. So,
Right.
we do have funding, we have our operating budgets, we have our capital improvement, we have our maintenance budgets that Joe's team manages. But if something comes up for another department, and sometimes even within our department, that was something that was unplanned or unbudgeted for, and it could be something as simple as furniture. There is a pot of money that is managed by fiscal services, and it's capital outlay funding. So for instance, if the health department calls and says, hey, we didn't know about this and we didn't budget for new furniture, but we've realized that like 3 of our offices have old furniture in them and they're not ergonomic. We really need to replace that furniture. It's not safe, it's not healthy. And so how do we do that? And then that's when the department and us will work with fiscal services to say, hey, there's this need, it's not in their budget. They'll look at it, approve it, and say, okay, well, we have some money in the capital outlay fund, you can use it for that. So I'm assuming that line that you're referring to refers to an item similar to that.
Like furniture and this sort of thing for your unit.
Well, in this case, because it's in our line, it would be for our department, right? Because Jason, when we help other departments with their needs and it comes out of capital outlay funding, we help with the process and we approve it and request it, but it goes into that department's, yes. Yeah, into their operating budget. So do we happen to know offhand what that might be for?
So the 63-100 fund, which is the facilities maintenance and operations budget, is a shared budget. So we also share it with the Safety Division of Homeland Security. I'm not aware of anything within our line items of doing that. So I would have to look more into it because it could be something falling under there.
We think we know what it is, actually,
Yeah.
the health. So we got the handy categorical,
Yeah.
I believe it's a smart machine. Is the acronym, but it
That's
is for the.
That would be under support services,
smart
which is not
Yeah,
the FMNO, that'd be the
Equipment.
FM.
Yeah, okay, yep,
Cool,
thank you.
thanks, alright.
Thank you.
So it's for a machine type thing, okay. It was just one of those funny things, you know, kinda like a turducken or something, like the capital outlay of the capital. Just trying to.
Terminology, I get it.
Yeah, right, and then, I think you all were kinda mentioning this, so I also wanted to understand the rates that, 'cause is this like how IT works, where it's kind of like an internal service fund where,
Exactly.
so like, okay, so the health department in their budget has for next year $1.4 million towards rent.
Yep.
And that's, yeah, tell me more about like how that's calculated, cause I see that there's different rates per square foot.
And I'll speak to it real quick and then I'll let Joe provide the finer details, but you're right, the county set up like a business where we all have our own budgets and our own funds to work for, and Joe's division provides a service, and part of that is providing, we provide the square footage, right? We provide the space, so the rates are based on what, a 5-year average?
Five-year actual
rolling
cost,
average.
rolling
Yeah.
average.
So the buildings may be different in what we charge for lease or rent, but that's just because different buildings cost more or less to operate them, and so a building will have a square footage rate, and then depending on how many square feet each department occupies, they simply, we simply multiply that square footage by the amount of square foot that they occupy. That then covers the costs that Joe incurs to perform all of the maintenance and the operation for the building. For instance, just standard maintenance things, and then also utilities and
All they get for utilities, trash.
So in addition to, so the capital improvement, the CIP, capital improvement program, is the list of like forward-minded projects. The building improvement fund is the maintenance, right? And then you also get money from each department that says it costs this much to maintain our building or do janitorial custodial services, or someone breaks a window or something.
Landscape services.
Yeah.
Correct.
So then, okay, so then your budget is actually a lot bigger than it looks at first blush. Right, the CIP is gonna go up to 8 million a year, right? No. But the building improvement fund will go up to 8 million a year, is that right? There's something that's going up to 8 million a year in 2027.
It helps if you tell the
Yeah, I know.
page number.
I saw it and then I lost it, so I feel bad. It is the CIP. Am I wrong?
Well, our budgets are just a little confusing, we have
I
like
know, right.
several different ones
Yeah,
that
that's
make
what I'm
up the
trying
whole
to
department.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out, sorry.
They're actually like very confusing, and
Yeah.
and that's part of the separation too with the different divisions, like Jason's division, focuses heavy on capital improvement,
Right.
and then where Joe's is more operating and maintenance, and then
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, it's CIP
Staying at
staying
six,
at
yeah.
6, okay.
And then like Stephanie mentioned, like their safety that used to be part of facilities management, that we don't quite share the money with them, but it comes from the same place, and Erin's division is the same as well, where we're not the same division. She's got her team, I've got mine, and she's got her budget and I've got mine, but yet the money comes from the same place. So when you're looking through the budgets, it sometimes can be a little confusing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Grace.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the 2023 one, you said 23 and 24 for the CIP. And so the general fund, building improvement fund in 23 was gonna say you were gonna go up to 8 million a year in 27, but now you're staying at 6 million.
Correct.
Oh, well, how did that conversation go?
So I just wanna stop you here for a minute, because we only have about 7 minutes left with this group.
Okay,
Okay.
good timing, Glenn, alright.
But if you wanna get in the
Alright.
weeds with them, I'm sure they're more than happy to.
And I don't recall, I will
offline.
just say real
Okay.
quickly, I don't recall, and we can have a discussion after this.
Sure.
For sure. And part of the reason why I don't recall, and I'm not sure if any will here, is like, I'm sure you understand like what the past 2 months has been for every department, right, and the number of conversations. And, you know, like I mentioned before you arrived, I mean, we have such a large group, right, of 215 people, and the amount of stuff that we're responsible for. And, you know,
Oh, sorry.
I know we're at 6 million a year right now, but how we got there, I can't piece together all the conversations that took place to determine why we're,
Okay,
not at this minute.
fair enough. Yeah, I guess offline I'd love to learn more about the different buckets. And I guess just two real quick questions, I guess, which is, is this system sustainable of your kind of like billing other departments for rent? Cause IT seems to starting to be thinking that it's not, that they seem down on their model of kind of being like a single source business internal. I mean, does this work for you guys?
It has, yeah, and I don't think we project any issues. I mean, of course, every year we're reevaluating what those rates are. Like I said, it's a 5-year. We look back and see what the costs have been to operate and maintain the facilities, and the rates adjust accordingly, so.
Yeah. And the departments are okay with like having to be in line. That's what IT referenced is people feel bad that they have to spend $3,000 for an $800 laptop out of their budget, and then they have to get billed every 15 minutes for stuff, but people don't have that qualm with you.
No,
Oh, great.
if they do, I haven't heard any.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. They say behind your back. And then the last thing I was gonna ask is about the ADA CIP. Cause in 24, you're gonna put in almost $301,000 towards ADA compliance, which is part of a $16 million effort. But then no money for years 25 and 26 towards ADA. What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, you know, we identified our needs and we have a general idea of what we need to make ADA improvements. And it's north of $20 million. And, you know, now that we are where we are with the Pontiac project, we can start looking at what funding we will have available and can prioritize that. And I can tell you that the top two of the top things on our list are life safety and ADA.
You have the $50 million from the state for the Pontiac, downtown Pontiac building. Will any of that qualify for the campus, or is it just downtown Pontiac?
It's just downtown Pontiac.
Cool. And the last thing, since you're here, if you haven't already taught us, can you teach us a little bit about this steam plant decommissioning? Did you already teach us all about that?
No, what would you like to know about it?
It's just a line in a budget, so what is it?
I can
Yeah.
real quickly.
Why is it
You
bad?
can add on, it's not bad, so anyway, you know, as part of our assessment of all of our capital needs, one thing that we recognize is that, you know, the steam plant may not be the most efficient way to operate our campus. So part of that study looked at what would it take to decommission that campus and maybe go with full electrification of our buildings, right? And so at the time with the vendor, the consultant we worked with, they helped us put an estimate on that. And, you know, we're just carrying that as a line so that it's always on the radar. Now, we really won't have the opportunity, and the intention is not to just someday shut that place down and then we're operating on, you know, a different energy source. It of course is gonna be a very long process of as we are maybe renovating buildings, we take that building off of steam and put it on electricity or geothermal, which we just did with the new sheriff's office evidence storage center. So, it would be over a course of several years that we may incur those costs to get to where we wanna be with our sustainability and carbon efforts.
Okay, does that line up with your goals?
Yes, yep. Yeah, Ed and I work very closely together with the facilities team for sustainability efforts.
Cool. All right, thank you.
I was just about to give you the hook, Commissioner. Okay, I'm gonna ask a question or two. And those of you who came late, I'm sorry, but we may not have time for your questions. But facilities, I'm sure, can answer you offline if you have other stuff.
100%.
I really only have a couple of questions. The first is electric car chargers. What's the plan for that on this campus? Or do you have a plan? I mean, I'd like to see open it up, it says this, here's our plan between now and 5 years from now.
Okay, well, if that's what you're looking for, we do not have that.
Okay,
But as I gave presentations on the acceptance of the Michigan Enhancement Grant of the $1 million, I'm planning for what we're doing with that. So that's going to be 20 chargers distributed throughout campus in a variety of different locations outside of the courthouse, outside of here, at Waterford Oaks, et cetera, and some other parks projects. And so those things are ongoing. We did also.
What's your timeline on that?
Really it's just a matter of getting the infrastructure and then installation. Some of the projects are phased, so Parks is more advanced on their repaving projects that they had and the associated EV infrastructure. Some of the facilities, parking lots have yet to be gone under construction, and so they're just phased at different timelines.
Okay.
But they're all within this cycle. We have a time frame for the Michigan Enhancement Grant to be spent, so.
My impression is this has gone really slow. I've been asking about electric chargers since 2019 January, right? So I just feel like it's gone really slow considering they're out there, other,
Yep.
organizations have them in their parking lots, we don't, and I think we should.
again.
So the other is the question of the whole Pontiac thing, and I know it hasn't been shared with us what departments are planned to move, or any of that. What's the timeline for revealing what the plan is in terms of who's gonna go there and what that means for here? I mean, I know it's sensitive because it involves a lot of people, it involves moving your work location and so on. But there's gotta be an overarching timeline of sorts by which you plan to do this. Without sharing any information you're not supposed to, can you give us a little taste of what that looks like?
And thank you for recognizing that it is a little sensitive, right? Because you're right. Our team has an idea of what we think would work well, right? But that hasn't been vetted by everyone that needs to vet it. And even then, once it's been vetted, we haven't even had the opportunity to talk to the departments yet, right? And that's part of the sensitivity, right? Again, we have an idea of what departments might move down there, but no one wants to speak to that until we've had, given the courtesy of speaking with the departments and talking through that. But the timeline would be, I know that my team is supposed to meet with the executive leadership team, within the next month to confirm who we think makes sense to move down there. And even then, it's gonna open up some space here, and then what do we do with that space, right? As far as like decommissioning buildings, selling buildings, or moving other departments into those vacant buildings, right? So we're hoping that, within a month, we will have that firmed up so that we have our direction. And then, we can start meeting individually with the departments that are gonna be impacted so we can start that planning process.
Okay, And my last comment will be, I really appreciate that you have done this. We talked about this when I first came on, that we should take an overall look at the campus and what is our building utilization and what's our energy policy and so, and we had these conversations way back then. And many of you were in them, and I really appreciate that you have done this, have taken this holistic approach, have stepped through it, and the decisions that you're making are based on good, logical evaluation. And I think that says a lot, that because it hasn't been an easy thing to do and it hasn't, not everybody was in support of us doing that, but I think it's fundamental to being fiscally responsible and environmentally responsible going forward. So I appreciate that, and I wanted to say so since I yelled at you about the car chargers.
No, that's fine, and thank you for that, and if I can, just respond to that real quickly. So thank you, because yes, we did go through a very extensive study on, you know, where we are right now with our space, what we actually need, especially in this new world that we live in, right? And, you know, at the time, this Pontiac move wasn't even on the radar. Well, it worked out perfect for us because when Jason and his team, this whole team, started looking at, okay, what folks should we move down there? We had all of the data. Now we have the data, right? We're not saying that this department has this many square feet, so that's how many we need when we move them downtown. No, we have the data from the extensive studies to say, well, they have this much space, but they really only need this space, or they need this space, and that's what we're using to move folks down there. And you know, when we took a look at the CIP needs assessment, when we took a look at our space needs assessment, you know, again, it has, I know it's been taking a long time. I know that the car chargers and other things have been taking a long time. Part of the reason for the time that it has taken is, one, it took a long time to bring all of that data together, looking at it holistically, like you said. And then we got to a point where we're like, okay, now how do we make this happen, right? You know, I think Hillary said it when we presented on the CIP. It's like, you know, how do you eat an elephant, right? And that was part of the feeling. And you know, we were trying to wrap our heads around, like, how do we make these moves and do these changes with really no swing space to do it, right? We don't have the luxury of just shutting down an entire building so that we can renovate it and move people around, right? We are having to, you know, we have folks that we need to serve, and we need to keep these facilities open and operating while we're trying to make these changes. What's happening downtown is, like, it's been a kind of, you know, it's a huge project and a huge undertaking, but it's also kind of a big relief because now we have the blank canvas that we need to start implementing all of these things that we've been talking about for the past few years.
Excellent. Okay, we are 5 minutes past our time for this group. If you can make it really short, Commissioner Hoffman.
I was beforehand.
Yeah, and Commissioner Long, I'll give you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm sorry I was late. We were told there's $700 million worth of deferred maintenance on this campus. Anybody want to tell me about
We just talked about that. Did you miss that part of the meeting?
I'm sorry I did.
I'm sorry you did
Half a
too.
billion. I mean, yeah.
$750 million. I find it hard to believe.
It is what it is. Cool.
What? Nobody want to say anything?
No, I
already
can, but I
talked
mean,
about it.
we spoke about it extensively.
Mine's already
It's-
done.
And I'd be happy, if we don't have time, I'd be happy to talk to you about it
Okay,
offline.
I will
afterwards.
later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay. Commissioner Long.
And mine's quick, and if it was already done, sorry I was late, but on the budget book, page 335, the professional services, it was budgeted for $223,000 and it was $413 amended. We spent $413, or you guys did it for professional services. What did that include? That bump up was like $200,000 more.
Does anyone know?
That was either the space needs study or the capital improvement study.
Okay, it was the study?
Could it have been the sustainability study?
It was not the sustainability, it was.
Because they went through our budget, okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Rahman, you were on here for one more question?
Just a real quick one, and this is something more of an observation, Erin, I don't know your thoughts, but like, I look around at the garbage cans and things like that. Do we have like recycling as well throughout the county campus? And maybe I just haven't traveled enough of the campus to know yet. I go to like Metro Airport, for instance, and they have like that triple garbage can, right? So part of it's like garbage, part of it's recycling, part of it's food, or I don't know, whatever that third garbage can is. And I look around like in our area and I notice we don't have anything remotely similar to that. So I just wanted to ask, and if it's not already being done or on the radar, just wanted to put it out there. Cause I look at like these little Meyer water bottles, all of them go in the trash. So I don't know if that's something that we have, sorry. I don't know if it's being done elsewhere on the campus.
We don't have it right now, it's definitely on the radar, it's right around the corner. Amanda and Aaron's team and us have been working on it, and the RFP is, I don't wanna say like how many days or months away from going out, but it's very close, right?
Overhaul of waste management and materials management under operations.
In like the whole program, like we're talking a whole recycling program, not just the receptacles that you're referring to.
Thank you.
Good, because we were way behind on that too. All right, we really appreciate you coming in. You're a very interesting department to talk to, and any of you on the commission that didn't get your questions answered because it's a big topic, please feel free to reach out to these folks. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, and Connie, again, any questions that you have, if you wanna reach out to Connie, Connie knows how to get a hold of me, and then I can meet either with you privately or put together some information that I can send you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. And have a snack on the way out if you feel like you'd like one. We bring them for everybody. And by the way, the roses look awesome. I just love those. They have really lasted a long time. They're fabulous. I really like them. Thank you.
Oh.
All right, we're gonna take a 2-second break so I can get something to drink. And then we'll
Well, they
be
can
right
go
up
up
with
their
Judge
circuit court.
Mattis.
We are.
Put him in our.
Get started here. All right, welcome to the second budget presentation for today. Everybody, welcome to the circuit court. And we're gonna ask you to make your presentation, and then just like you saw with the other group, our commissioners will have questions until the end, and you have to give them the hook and tell them.
Can you remind us who they are?
Yes, please tell us who you are. Oh, Judge Mattis is.
Oh, you're muted.
He looks familiar.
He does look
Yeah, he
familiar.
He used to be a commissioner.
I heard.
I know almost all of them there, they've been here as long as me down there.
No,
Wait a sec, Jeff, hold on.
yeah, he's.
So undo.
He's
Yeah,
marked,
wait.
he's not marked as muted. Yeah, I can't unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Start again.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
We can now.
Okay, excellent. I called in through the phone. I'm wondering if you can hear me better through the phone or through the video.
Probably through the video.
I'm getting some feedback here. Should I stay on the phone or through the video?
The video, please.
Video. All right, one moment please while I turn the volume up. Okay, can you hear me now?
Very good.
Yes.
That works.
Excellent. All right, then I'm going to disconnect my phone and can you still hear me?
Yes. Yeah, because the phone's.
Excellent. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I want to thank Chairperson Markham, the commissioners, the board representatives, and other guests present for letting us make this presentation today. It's a privilege and an honor to appear before you as the Chief Judge of the Oakland County Circuit Court. My name is Jeff Mattis, for those of you that I don't know. As I should mention, that I'm currently up in northern Michigan on a family vacation right now. It was scheduled long before today's date was set. But being a former commissioner myself and having been on the Finance Committee, okay, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, up north internet.
Yeah, you got the up north internet.
Yeah, it's your internet probably. It freezes once in a while, but it's probably because he's up north,
Okay.
you know?
Okay, just let me know if you can't hear me and I'll make sure I repeat anything so you hear what I have to say. So I'm in up north on a family vacation that was scheduled long before today's meeting, but being a former commissioner myself, okay. Should I call in and do the audio over the phone? Would that be easier?
I'd work better.
Yeah.
Just because
You
he's up
could
north.
try that
it's
again,
probably-
but I would end the.
Can you hear me all right?
It's breaking up.
It's breaking up, I think
Okay. All right, I was on the phone before, but I can call in again.
Shut the.
Or you can just turn your camera off.
Let me call in on the phone then.
But I think then you have to get off the video though, because then I
I would
think it's
say
a background
leave the
noise.
video, Judge.
All right. Give
Yeah,
me 1 second here.
Telephone and mute his.
that's what I think, that's what I, yeah.
Okay, Judge, if you would call on the phone, but mute yourself on the
One
video.
moment.
Mute the video and then you won't get that background noise, right?
Just like a motion call on Zoom. This is
Yeah.
what we do, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Pretty normal.
New world.
Yes.
Look how much time we've actually saved because we didn't have to
For
all
sure.
be in the same.
That's true. There we go.
All right. Can you hear me now? All right. Let's turn the volume down.
Can you,
All right.
he is muted on his
You need to
computer.
turn down your
He's muted on-
speaker, Judge.
On
He's muted on his
His mute
video.
button.
On your
Yeah.
laptop, hit the button in the corner to turn off your speaker, because you're getting the feedback from us in the room.
Go to closing argument.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes. But you're frozen.
All right.
That's okay.
Turn off your mic. Okay. Are we good to go now?
Yeah.
It sounds like it, yes.
I think so, yeah.
All right. I can hear you loud and clear. All right. Again, thank you for your patience. If you can't hear anything, just let me know and we'll certainly fix it. But let me start over again. I don't know what you heard, but good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Chairperson Markham, the members of the commission on this committee, other board representatives, and other guests that are present. My name is Jeff Mattis. I'm the Chief Judge of the Oakland County Circuit Court, and it's my privilege to be here today to present our budget to you for your approval. As I was saying, I think where you lost me is I am in northern Michigan right now on a family vacation. It was scheduled a long time ago before today's date was set, but I did want to appear, and I also didn't want to ask to move the time. I know how much effort it goes for the commission to have this meeting, how you're balancing all the different budgets you have to vote on. So I did want to go forward today, understanding it was the day that worked best for you. With that said, I'd like to introduce some others that are with me today in the room. Judge Lisa Langton, who's presiding judge of the Family Division. Rich Lynch, who's our Circuit Court Administrator. Pam Monville, who's our Deputy Court Administrator. Chris Bujak, who is our Circuit Court Business Manager. Suzanne Hollier, the Director of the Oakland County Friend of the Court. And Jeanette Miracle LaShawn, who's Chief Assistant Friend of the Court Operations. Just some quick background on the court. I think some of the commissioners may be newer in case you're not familiar. We have 20 judges in the Oakland County Circuit Court. 2 preside in the Business Court, 7 in the Family Division, and 11 in the Civil Criminal Division. The Circuit Court handles both civil and criminal cases, family matters, business cases. The criminal matters are predominantly felonies with some misdemeanors if they're related in some way to the felony or in certain circumstances. Generally, the district courts handle misdemeanors. We handle felonies, but there are some exceptions. Our criminal cases involve both juveniles as well as adults. In the civil cases, we handle civil cases that are over $25,000 in value. So personal injury cases, but also a multitude of other matters, property disputes, and various other civil matters that bring people to court. We also handle appeals from district court rulings, as well as appeals from various administrative agencies. In our family division, they handle divorces, custody, paternity, parental abuse, neglect proceedings, PPOs, adoptions, as well as other matters. The court also has a number of specialty courts that we're very proud of. The adult treatment court programs that we have to address substance abuse and mental health issues, both for males and females. We have adult and juvenile treatment courts, and we also have a veterans court. I was one of the former judge that was presided in the treatment court program. I fully support these programs, as does the current Michigan Supreme Court. With regard to our caseloads, certainly COVID created a backlog. I mean, there's no way around that. We were ordered to not have jury trials for a significant amount of time because of COVID. That was obviously by the Supreme Court as well as the governor. But we did continue to operate during COVID. We handled cases remotely, both civil, criminal cases, family matters, and a number of cases did resolve and were handled throughout COVID. As soon as we were able to, we began trying as many cases as we could, bringing jurors back into the courtroom. And our judges have worked very, very hard to try many cases and to move that backlog, to get rid of it. Initially, we focused on criminal cases, the law requires us to do, and we have obviously focused on the civil as much as possible. In order to help us address further getting rid of the backlog, we have recently received a grant through SCAO. SCAO is the State Court Administrator's Office, SCAO. That's the Supreme Court entity that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And we recently received a significant grant that's aimed at helping us to reduce the backlog. We applied and received that grant, and we want to thank you for your support with regard to the acceptance of that grant. We are in the midst of announcing, implementing, and moving forward with a settlement week program that we have created as part of this grant. And what it's going to involve is attorneys will act as mediators to help try to resolve cases. In these cases, they'll be the oldest cases will be earmarked for the program. And if the cases do not settle through this mediation program, they will be set for trials as soon as possible with a number of visiting judges who have offered to assist. Obviously, there will be they will be paid, and that's what the grant will assist with, some former judges from our bench as well as judges from other courts. We've worked closely with the Oakland County Bar Office on this to help facilitate all the details. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow our judges to focus more on their criminal cases to address as many of those possible, while hopefully these civil cases are resolved through the program. The program will also involve family cases, so divorce cases, as well as other family matters, as well as business court cases that we believe are appropriate. We're estimating presently that approximately 700 cases may be involved in this program, which we've identified in beginning in October. So that number may change as cases resolve or new cases may be added, but that is our best estimate right now. And again, we thank you for your support with regard to that grant, which is going to help us to move forward with this. As to, in general, our caseload, case filings did dip somewhat during COVID, as you would expect, but they have returned now to pre-pandemic numbers, and we are projecting a 5% increase in cases over fiscal year 23 over fiscal year 22. So we are projecting an increase in cases. Just to try to put a number on it so you understand what we're talking about, there are approximately 11,000 new case filings in the first 2 quarters of this year. Obviously, we deal with a lot of cases in our court. The court has, frankly, too many programs for me to go into in the time that I have to speak with you today, but I did want to touch on just a few things. One is certainly youth assistance and specifically the Mentors Plus program. The court supports the Mentors Plus program. It's in our budget that we're presenting to you. We appreciate your support, and we do support that program, just to address that one program. There's also something else that does affect us, is there's a number of new things coming out of Lansing that have a significant effect on court operations. And this is predominantly within 2 categories. One is cases that come down from the Michigan Supreme Court or even the Court of Appeals that create new requirements or hearings or things that we have to do in handling our cases that can increase the workload for trial judges. The other is laws that are passed that similarly create sometimes new requirements or change existing requirements. There's just a few examples that I can give you. One is in the civil world. The Supreme Court recently changed the case evaluation rules. Civil cases used to be required to go to case evaluation. There were sanctions. It was a tool to try to help resolve cases. The Supreme Court modified that rule, and there's no longer sanctions. And so it's had a significant effect on the number of cases and the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that lawyers and litigants wish to use. There's issues with regard to expert witnesses in juvenile matters in terms of availability, setting aside convictions, something you may have heard about. The law has been changed in that regard, and it has really opened up the opportunity for many, many more people to request to have prior convictions set aside. That has led to a lot of motions being filed by people with convictions asking they be set aside, and our judges have to handle those motions, which sometimes turn into sort of mini hearings dealing with a lot of issues. So that's a great example how the law changed and has increased the workload of our judges as a result. There's just a lot more there now. There's other matters. There was a very case that came down from the Supreme Court dealing with what's called open and obvious defense. Basically, the idea is if someone has a slip and fall and they file a lawsuit related to that, alleging personal injuries, the defendant could raise the issue that whatever the condition was that caused the fall was open and obvious. Under prior law, that would be a legal question for a judge, meaning under certain circumstances, the judge might dismiss the case. Now, this recent case has come down, which supports that, in general, these are fact questions, not legal questions, meaning more of these cases will now go to juries. So we're going to have more jury trials as a result than we did before. Another example is certainly the Miller hearing, which you've probably heard about as it relates specifically to the Oxford shooting case. The Supreme Court, a number of years ago, came down with a case, Miller versus Alabama, which held that it was unconstitutional to automatically give a juvenile life without parole, even if convicted of first-degree murder. So now trial judges are required to have a hearing, analyze a lot of information, a lot of factors, and ultimately make a decision. But in any case involving a juvenile in that type of a charge or conviction, a hearing is required. And so again, those are examples of things where the law has just changed by way of a case or a court rule or a statute and has significantly increased the workload of the trial judges. One other example is the Extreme Risk Protection Act legislation that deals with, under certain circumstances, confiscation of a gun. That is something we've talked about that we're certainly prepared for, but it's unclear how many of these petitions we're going to receive. If there's a lot of them, there are time constraints that these have to be handled within, and there certainly could be an impact on the workload of judges who are handling those petitions. There are some other things that through MIDC, as you probably know, the court used to appoint counsel for criminal cases. If someone was indigent, couldn't afford an attorney, their right to be represented, and the court would appoint counsel. And that has changed. It's now the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission makes that appointment, and the court does not make the appointment anymore. That has resulted in some delays that we have talked with Pete Mena, who heads up the MIDC in Oakland County about, which has forced the court to often adjourn proceedings while a new lawyer is sought and while that new lawyer is appointed by MIDC. So we're working through that issue. There's an issue of funding with regard to juvenile attorneys who do juvenile criminal work. Oftentimes, many of the attorneys some attorneys who do both adult and juvenile representation in criminal cases, and the adult attorneys in that role are generally paid more money than the juvenile, when they're representing a juvenile. And that's something that's being talked about right now. There's proposed legislation and various things that are happening at front to try to make sure that qualified attorneys who can give proper representation are available and will obviously represent juveniles so that the matter can be properly handled. One other issue is the court, unfortunately, like a lot of people or entities these days, has had some data breaches where we have worked with the executive's office and corporate counsel to address the issues. And moving forward, we will likely need to address technology improvements to reduce the risk of such breaches in the future, especially where it relates to friend of the court records, juvenile records, or sensitive data or records that we just have to make sure is protected. There's just some other things briefly I want to touch on. There's issues with court costs. There's some legislation and some changes coming on court costs that may reduce or eliminate a court's ability to incur or to receive court costs. We're analyzing that issue now to see ultimately what the impact could be. But in 2022, according to our data, it was $280,000. So there could potentially be a budgetary impact on that. And again, just in juvenile justice, there are a number of issues being discussed. There's also been some discussion about the court's case management system. You may have heard that from either the executive's office or perhaps the clerk's office. Specifically, whether the court, in conjunction with the county executive's office, should develop its own system or partner with the state, specifically, again, SCAO, State Court Administrator's Office, regarding a statewide system. I've spoken with a number of individuals, both locally and at the state level and at the Supreme Court, about this. Our current system is very, very old, and simply needs replacing. We're looking at the options right now to try to determine what's best for the court. obviously potentially what cost would be associated with it. But this is going to be a big project, and it's an important issue that we certainly will keep you advised as we go forward. There's a lot more I could say, but I'm sure you have questions, and I don't want to use up all of our time with my statement. I would just say simply that I know the board has a long history of supporting the court and its budget, and thank you for that support. We've worked with the executive's office regarding the budget we're presenting to you. We believe the budget is reasonable, it's appropriate, it's a good use of the taxpayer dollars, and will allow the court to continue to fulfill its duty to serve the people of the county well. As such, as chief, I respectfully request that you vote to approve our budget that we have submitted to you. Again, I thank you for your time and certainly welcome any questions you may have at this point. And even after we depart today, if there's any further questions you have, please reach out to Rich Lynch, our court administrator, and we'll make sure that we get you answers. So again, thank you for your patience, and we stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Before, can I make, I'm just gonna add to that on one topic. And the topic I'm here to speak on is our compensation for our attorneys in our neglect and abuse cases. So when the 20 judges got together and decided what our priority would be, our priority unanimously, there's 7 of us in family, but our 20 judges supported that we are at crisis level with trying to retain and attract attorneys to do this docket. So what our attorneys do in this docket, we have an attorney that represents the abused or neglected child, guardian ad litem, all right? And then we have an attorney for mom and we have an attorney for dad. And minimally on those, if it's a termination case, there are like 3 mini trials. One of them could be a jury trial in that proceeding. It takes a long time. We are paying these attorneys at subpar levels. I've been going to our Oakland County Bar Association meetings with our juvenile lawyers. Since the MIDC, which is fabulous, we're thankful for that, they're no longer coming to juvenile. They're gonna go get paid $120 an hour, $130 an hour, which it's a good wage, but in lawyer land, it's still not that much. If any of you have hired lawyers, you know, right? But what we're paying our juvenile lawyers now is about $20 an hour. And I'll give you an example, all right? We pay, if you wanna go visit, if you're a guardian ad litem on a neglect case and you're representing this abused child, and this child is over at the care portion of our Children's Village, Amandy's Place, you get paid $60. So that doesn't include driving, that doesn't include waiting, that doesn't include the time you do to prepare, $60. That's what you get to go see this child in danger, basically. All right, the one you're trying to protect. There's an initiative in this country, and particularly in our county, to try to keep families together. We're trying to not put these kids in foster care, not put these kids out of home. Well, we got mom and dads that, you know, are in these systems, and we're struggling to find lawyers to represent them and advocate them and make sure they're connected with services and make sure they get to work with the department in a meaningful way. So I'm really here just to implore you to reconsider this decision. And I understand part of it. So there's pending legislation right now that will add attorneys representing delinquents on our caseload under the umbrella of the MIDC. And so I understand that, and I'm leaving that alone. But nothing includes the attorneys that are, there's no pending legislation that will assist or increase or put under the umbrella of MIDC lawyers that represent mom, dads, and kids. So our message is we should be paying people to represent our kids the same we're paying attorneys that represent our criminals. All right, that's where we're at. All right, we'll pay you to represent a rapist, a murderer, which I'm in support of. We need good lawyers on those, but we won't pay to represent the kids. So from my really limited perspective of being in family court, and prior to that, I helped formulate the family division plan in my previous role 35 years ago, all right? But I am just here for the county to reconsider its position that not to give us any additional funds. Since MIDC has come into place, we've lost 30% of our attorneys on our court appointment list. That's a big number, but more importantly, we're not getting new lawyers in. So as these seasoned lawyers, age out and decide to retire, we have no upcoming class. We have no succession planning for our attorneys. So that's my speech. I'm impassioned about it because I feel strongly it takes us a very long time to find lawyers to represent us. We are not within our guidelines. Our numbers are terrible in guidelines because we cannot literally find lawyers to come to our hearings between the 7 family division lawyers and the referees that we have that do the same work. So it's just so important, and I really hope that the county will reconsider and give us some additional monies to pay our lawyers on these very important cases for our families. That's my soapbox.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
But just, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Was there a plan submitted that we're not
We did.
seeing here?
Well, we asked for an increase in it says increase in defense attorney fees and juveniles to be in line with the MIDC, and an increase in fees paid to our garden ad litems. And both of those were denied in part because there is legislation that is pending that will deal with representation of for attorneys on our delinquency docket, but not on our neglect. So it doesn't include those, and that's or garden ad litems, right? So those are the 2 areas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, because that's not, because we didn't see that in the proposed budget, right? So, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the list as people have signed up here. So first we have Commissioner Long, then Commissioner Cabell.
All right,
We have total about 15 minutes.
mine's quick, I think. Mine's on the budget page, so it might be for you guys in budget, but they might have to assist you. But page 212, on the bottom, it's under personnel operating expenses. It's the line item 731,416, private institutions residential, and it's 2.7 million. What is that?
Out-of-home placement.
Yeah.
Okay.
When our kids are taken out for either neglect or delinquency
That's
cases.
just what you were talking about,
Yeah.
right?
There are
Okay.
very few beds
Yeah.
available, I'm sorry.
Right, it's difficult with Children's Village, we're struggling again, they're closing beds down. I mean, lots of places have closed bed down, they can't find employees, their per diems are going up exponentially, so that's what that line item is.
Okay, and then does that include Children's Village if you put the
No,
does not?
there's a separate line item for that.
Okay.
Out-of-home placements have gone from just being like $180 or a couple $100 a day for a child to over $600 a day in some situations. And we can't find beds to place children.
And some of the children do have to end up being placed out of state.
Yes.
Which is detrimental to trying to reunite the families and the care of the youth as you keep them in their community.
And this isn't just an Oakland County problem. So, I mean, this is a statewide problem and we've been working with the state to try to.
So your 2.7 million, that's what's amended and adopt, that will be enough though, because it looks like you only spent actual in 2022, but now you said the rates are tripled, right?
Yes, the rates are going up.
868,000, but yeah, if you went from 180 to 600, that's gonna be huge difference every
The
day.
only reason we haven't really spent all of our budget during COVID was because there aren't beds available.
Okay, but you
You know,
could have, but you couldn't find,
We
yeah.
could have spent much more, but there are kids that are being left in situations where it's not the recommendation.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, what happens to the kids that don't get placed, so most likely
Try to put intensive services in the home, find
Okay.
relatives through foster care, those types of things,
Okay,
so.
so that's a big issue, the housing or the placement.
And we don't place kids, it's an intentional process. We have an out-of-home placement committee that reviews each case where there's a recommendation that they be removed from the home. And that involves people from our clinic, Children's Village, workers, Department of Health and Human Services. So there is a effort on each kid to try to keep them out of home, in home and not out of home. So they go through a process before we even before the court even makes that recommendation.
Okay.
If I could just jump in on this, just one thing with regard to, I want to make sure, especially the commissioners understand, sort of what we're talking about here with the different types of cases. So obviously we have juvenile delinquency cases, which are criminal cases where it's alleged that a juvenile, a minor, has committed a crime. But then we also have the abuse neglect cases, and that's what Judge Langton, I think, was really referring to. And the allegation there is typically it's brought by DHHS. CPS is often involved with allegations of abuse or neglect upon a child or children, typically by the parents. Now, those go different directions. There could be a temporary, what we call a temporary petition, which often might involve, say, someone has a substance abuse issue or drugs issue or alcohol issue, but there has been an abuse neglect situation. The children might be temporarily removed from the home. Typically, they try to place them with another relative, if at all possible. But the goal is ultimately to reunite the child with the parents after services and various things have occurred to help address whatever the abuse neglect situation was. And those time periods can be very lengthy, where the child is temporarily, for the child's well-being, is removed from that environment. Or there's a permanent petition, which is a termination of parental rights. And that's where it's deemed that the abuse or neglect is of such of a serious magnitude or situation that the request is to terminate rights with no reunification, so that the parents no longer have a legal right to be the parent of the child. But under these different situations, it is important that the children be placed into a safe, proper environment where they're getting services or whatever is deemed appropriate based on the case. And obviously there's costs associated with that. So I just wanted to make sure everyone sort of understood the background of the cases we've been talking about, because they are different, whether it's a juvenile delinquency or the abuse neglect cases.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was my question.
Okay, next up we have Commissioner Cavell, followed by Commissioner Wiper.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everybody. The cabin looks great, Judge. The living annoying, that's awesome. I have a couple questions about, and this is kind of what Commissioner Long was saying, but the private institutions went up $2 million. State institutions also went up $3 million. Is that the same sort of thing?
Yes. In general.
Are you on the line item there, Charlie, on the state?
Yeah, it's a.
Oh, I see it. Couple past mine, okay.
Yeah. And so what you're saying, if you could kind of dumb it down a little more.
So the private institutions are obviously not state-run, and so they would be, usually if you have a child that needs a specific mental health issue, or we can't find a state institution that would take the child, or there's not a bed, then we use a combination of both. We use private facilities that are run by private people, it's probably a for-profit. I'm trying to think of an example of one. Wolverine might be one. I'm thinking of other ones, but we try to go either first to meet the needs of the child, or two, just to find a safe bed.
Commissioner Cavell, there wasn't an increase in that line item. I think we only spent, I think what you're looking at the fact that we only spent $868 in '22, but it's 2.7 for this year, 2.7 for next year.
Oh, he's on the other state one though.
Under private institutions.
That's private.
Oh, you're looking at state.
But the
I'm
same
sorry.
thing.
But it's the same thing,
Yeah,
yes.
one
It's just
point one, that's only
That
spent.
was the budget. There was not an increase given in these line items this year.
And so, what you're saying is that the state will reimburse a certain amount?
Under the child care fund that we approved the budget for a week or so ago, right? We received 50% back on our out-of-home placements. We were receiving 50% back on community-based in-home placements and programs. That is changing for next year to 75%. And so of course, not only for just money, we want to pursue those placements, but we will be focusing on that, and we're starting a task force in conjunction with some of the other interested entities to try and make sure that we're getting development of those programs too.
I was gonna ask about that, so yeah, thank you. What does that look like with the 75-25? And you said in-home, but
Yeah, the
community-based, right?
the 75% reimbursement is only on community-based placements. So in community-based programs. So on the out-of-home placements that I mentioned, like $600 a day for a child, we will not be reimbursed 75%. That is still just 50%. The only time we receive more than 50% is when it is a child from the Raise the Age grant. Raise the Age legislation passed that gives us some kids that are older now than we used to deal with. That's increased our caseloads about 23% in the juvenile area.
And so then, with the community-based incentive, it being 75-25 versus 50-50, do you anticipate though more of the juveniles you work with going towards that as opposed to being in Children's Village or as a part of the,
It's always our goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, but finding them and finding a good fit, that's the challenge. So, I mean, it's always our goal to put them, first of all, within their community. I mean, that's the first important thing, but we just, the options are, we struggle. We struggle with options. To be honest, we struggle with options.
And as we understand it, the state set up that 75-25 reimbursement so that we would have more money from that 75 to develop diversion programs for these kids. So we want to make sure that you understand that. That's not free money for the county exec or whoever to do something else with. That's the extra 25% is for us to develop diversionary programs so that we don't get the juvenile delinquencies. So we catch them earlier.
Right.
Why we're setting up a task force to try to explore what that's gonna look like and how we can develop those so that they become, an important part of our placements.
So if I understand you, it's going from 50-50 split where I don't wanna say incentive, but the norm is placing people out of home to then shifting to 75-25 where, in X amount of time, there'll be more diversion and like upstream programs that then will prevent the need for using a lot of this 50-50 split money. Cause there'll be, right, Children's Village has 8 abuse neglect people in it now. And so there'll be 3 abuse neglect children in Children's Village in 3 years. Right, I'm talking about abuse and neglect. Okay, so there's 72, when I went yesterday for my tour, there were 72 children in Children's Village. In 5 years, there will be 40. Is that what the goal of this is and the hope of this
That might
task
be the
force will be?
legislative goal.
Yeah.
However, if you look at the model, and Judge Langton referred to this, the out-of-home placement committee looked at all the options before out-of-home placement even becomes an option. So we've exhausted all of the resources internally within the court before we place a youth outside of the home. That is always a last resort for the court. So I don't think that you're going to see a big operational change within the court itself as it conducts its business, how it handles the youth, how it analyzes whether youth should be placed in out-of-home placement. Because again, looking at the best interest of the child as well as the safety of the community, that is a last resort because we want to rehabilitate and preserve that youth in the structure rather than placing that youth outside the home in, sometimes a term is coarsely used, a juvie jail. We're looking at the whole person to make sure they go through the process, and that has been the philosophy of the court throughout the time that I've been with the institution.
So you're saying that you don't think, what I'm trying to get to is, do you or do you not think that the 75-20, like there isn't something to pick that up quickly, so you'll have to build something new with the 75-25?
I think it'll give us an opportunity to work with some communities and develop programs that would be an option. But it's still gonna be, like, a lot of those kids, if we keep them out of home, would probably still be out of home and just not maybe in such a great environment or great opportunities or services provided to them. So you're not gonna see a shift from 50-50 to 75-25 being like some big number, I don't think. At least not in the near future.
We expect in our budget, rough estimate, about $500,000 of additional return back to the county from the state with this 75-25. So we're gonna get about $500,000 additional. We're looking now at how we take that $500,000 and what can we fund internally? What can we start a program? Can we have an additional specialty docket? What programs can we have to best use those funds to serve the youth that are placed out of home? If a kid needs out-of-home placement, they're still gonna need out-of-home placement. Like, we may have more programs and more options to help them avoid that, but you'll never end out-of-home placements because some kids require special services.
Sure, I'm not saying end, I'm just saying being able to have enough money to go upstream, that instead of 72, it's half that. But so my
Commissioner
question
Cavell,
though is.
I'm gonna have to ask
Alright.
you to wrap up so
But just to
the
clarify.
other commissioners can get their chance.
Okay, so last question, so are you saying that you think the 75-25 will be about 500K?
Roughly, yes, from what we've estimated based on this last fiscal year.
That doesn't sound like enough to make a substantive impact then.
It's only on our intensive, like, it's only gonna cover the ones that we've been doing so far that are community-based. So it's not, the most expensive portion of the $32 million child care fund budget is the village and the out-of-home placements. That's the majority of that budget.
Right, and you're only gonna get 500K more for the 75-25.
Right now, it's what we target, we don't know.
Okay.
We'll know.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up, we have Commissioner Weipert, followed by Commissioner Rahman.
And I don't want to shift off that important thing, but I did want to follow with Judge Mattis on the software and the IT. The clerk's office did tell us about that, and IT told us that our system is at end of life on the
Case management.
case management system. And there's two choices, SCAO or do we find one? And those, I mean, those are a big ticket item, I mean, it can be sometimes millions of dollars. It's gonna be. Yeah, multi-million, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I know, is it because we're kind of represented, we're told we have to go one way. Is it, are we exploring both our own system and SCAO, or?
Yes, yes, those are the two options. The option one obviously is to have our own system that we develop. Option two is to go to the state system. I think, SCAO's plan is ultimately to have all the courts in the entire state of Michigan be on the same system. I think, they would say that there's advantages with that judges in one court who might want information on a case in another court right now have a difficult time, getting access to that information. But if everyone's on the state system, you could immediately pull. If a person in front of you had a case in Wayne County or Traverse City or Muskegon, you could immediately access all those records. So I think that's the big thing that they are saying. Obviously, from a cost standpoint, the other issue is the Supreme Court has told us that they will pay the costs. So the statewide system, I'm being told, will not cost us anything. Whereas, obviously, if we have our own system, it will. Obviously, the other aspect of this is if we go with the state system, we are limited by the system they create. And there may be things we want in the system that may not have. They may not have that capability, whereas we can uniquely tailor our own system to our own needs as opposed to a generic system that other courts may like but may not be ideal for us. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Obviously, timing is a big one. We need to move quickly on this to the extent we can because our system is old, it's out of date, and we rely on it immensely and simply just can't be without it. So that's another factor. But as I mentioned, yes, we're gathering information. There was a study that was being done, and Rich, perhaps you could remind me the name of the study, but it was supposed to address a number of things that we want and a number of issues to help us have further discussions with SCAO about this. Rich, what was the name of the study that Mr. Coulter had mentioned to us when we met with him?
Yes, Your Honor, it's a risk gap analysis that the commission has already approved funding for and is anticipated to take between 5 to 6 months. We're anticipating results from that report approximately January of 2024.
Yeah, so that was, and candidly, we had hoped that that might move faster than it has, but that was something that was suggested to us that we thought made some sense to get more information. And then ultimately, if we were to have further discussions with SCAO about their system, you know, could we present this information to them and say, you know, if we were inclined to go with the SCAO plan, these are things we would really like in the plan or we need. And it would help us identify it. So bottom line, there's a lot of moving parts. We have ongoing discussions with a lot of people about this. And at the end of the day, you know, we need to make a decision and we want it to be the right one, but also be aware of the timing and the cost and a lot of the important factors.
Think of that, because historically, the state systems have not turned out the best, just for the largest counties, right?
Wish they would pilot with the largest counties and then drill down.
Right, so that's, I can see the worry there. And I did want to ask the friend of the court, and it's a little twist. The prosecutor's office came to us and was telling us about paralegals they have working enforcement support, you know, which is over at your system, right? We have paralegals helping the attorneys.
Yes.
And
We do too.
right. And how valuable that is, because the prosecutor's office was telling us they have 15 lawyers with one paralegal, and the lawyers are doing paralegal work because right, they're getting burned out. They're staying up all night doing exhibits and leaving. And how valuable are the paralegals? I mean, you guys are.
We have 19, we have 18 who do paralegal type work, and we have 19 referees. So our people in that classification do a really high volume of customer service work. They take enormous amounts of phone calls, and they do all of our review and modification. So every time somebody becomes eligible, you become eligible for review automatically once every 3 years. They get that and work it. Also, anytime somebody just files a request and says, something's changed, I've lost my job, or the other person won the lottery, they get those and they work those. So they're very valuable. They can talk to people on the phone, our legal staff are referees, and they can't talk to people on the phone. So they do take a very large volume of phone calls as well.
What's your ratio over there?
It's 19 attorney referees and 18 of the people who are operating in a paralegal capacity.
But it might be important to point out that Suzanne's referees and those paralegal's are serving like 5,000, 6,000 people on a docket, right, or on a caseload,
Yeah, we have
right?
50,000 cases, it's huge, we keep them forever. So our work is quite different from the prosecutor's office.
Was she talking about enforcement unit?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
We
you.
find them very, very valuable employees, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Next up, Commissioner Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're already over on time, so I'll narrow it down, I guess, to maybe one comment/question. As I listen to this presentation, you know, it's really disheartening to me because it seems like with each department we hear from, we realize how many gaping holes there are as a county, which is really, really disheartening as a new commissioner. Whether it's the case management system, Judge Lang, to your point of the attorneys who are coming and making $60 an hour to represent these abused and neglected children, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess coming in with all of 8 months in this position, just at a 40,000 foot level, can you explain to me, how did we get to the point that these attorneys are making $60 to come do this case? This didn't happen overnight. How long has this been going on for? And how much money are we talking about potentially investing to get us from where we are to where we need to be? What is that delta?
I've been here 35 years. Oh, I'm sorry, Chief, did you wanna?
No, Judge, I was gonna say Judge Langton, I think is a great person to answer your question. In addition to being presiding judge, he was previously in court administration, has a lot of experience, and I would defer to her to answer your question.
So, I mean, first of all, I feel for many, many years, we paid a very competitive rate. So for many, many years, I think Oakland County was sort of above the curve. So even though right now we find ourselves in a position where we're not, I think that's part of the societal focus on making sure that people in our juvenile justice system and our criminal justice system have fair representation. So I think that's been a societal thing that's increased, but probably, and I'm, I know that as a court, we've come down, in our budget, we've asked for increases over the years, but they are huge numbers. So it's just so hard. If we wanna pay what we are paying our attorneys representing our adult criminals, we need $4.6 million. Okay, that includes delinquents, so it'd probably be $3 million, okay, and I should have got a more specific number. For our guardian ad litems that represent our kids, that are attorneys for the children, that's about $1.4 million. And that's just to pay them like $120 an hour. But I would say it's been years in the making, and part of it has been that we've tried to increase things here and there, so we've kept our bar happy, but they're unhappy now. And now it's more exemplified because we have a group of appointed lawyers that are being paid twice, 3 times what they're being paid. So that's what put a spotlight on here we are today.
If you look at the court budget for the last 20 years, we've had about a 17% cut over 20 years, not counting for inflation. So if you think about what we paid employees and we paid people 20 years ago, we couldn't sustain that level, but we've been cut 17%, not even counting the inflation rate of our budget.
Much of the change has been implicated with the loss of positions that previously were in the court. For example, we no longer have the number of court reporters we used to have because we switched to technology. However, those technology costs also add to the budget, as anyone who ever has a device realizes that year after year there's an incremental cost that goes with that device. So you have those technology costs coming out. At the same time, you have a static cost for those attorney fees. And quite honestly, while they were being paid at par perhaps when Judge Langton entered the system, it was really a static line that, okay, they're still there, we're still paying this, we can get by.
Our fault too, because we weren't as aggressive as probably we should have been to advocate for them. So I'm not saying it's like we were just denied. I would say sometimes we just had higher priorities, and so here we are. Peggy.
To some extent, to go back to the facilities conversation you had prior to us, the question was properly raised about deferred maintenance. To some extent, the attorneys fell within the concept of deferred maintenance as we were busy putting out other fires.
Gotcha. Okay, I have one more commissioner and then we're gonna wrap up, and that's Commissioner Hoffman.
Have you put in a request for this? Because I mentioned this, yes, okay, as long as it's in there.
Yeah.
Because you have to have the right tools to do the right job, and we talked about this yesterday with the prosecutor's office. And it needs to be fixed because we're in a huge competitive world for everything. Labor is one of the biggest things.
Right.
Yeah, I support it.
100% agree.
I support fixing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to the Circuit Court. It's not a pretty picture, but we're glad you came and talked to us, and it's very educational, I think, especially for some of our newer commissioners, trying to understand where all the money goes and how it flows. I did have, I guess, one question. I know some of these changes that the state has mandated come with funding, but you're telling me a lot of it does not, that we've just been asked to do more and there's really no funding that has come with it. Is that, that's generally true? Okay, all right.
Yeah, yes, I think that is true, that we frequently see mandates imposed where there is no funding provided, yes.
I think that's true not only for the courts. We have other departments that's the same situation. I just kind of wanted to get that on the record. Go ahead.
One example would be the request that we made that we saw as a mandate for increased money for expert witnesses in juvenile cases. Because of new case law findings from the Supreme Court, we know that these types of experts are gonna be required in cases, and so we needed to have money in our budget. The county executive's office did approve that after Corp Counsel reviewed it and affirmed that that mandate was likely to impact our budget in that way.
Okay, good. Well, those discussions are happening then. That's good. All right, well,
Judge Hallmark's here too, so.
Yeah, she's next.
okay.
We
Welcome,
have Judge Hallmark here too.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for your time.
Next on our, next on our.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Judge Mattis, have a nice vacation.
Yeah.
Have a good day, everybody.
It's like UP, digital, no internet, you know, it's like, yeah, I worked at all of it.
You're on the list, but you know, Gwen told me with all the traffic. Yeah,
Okay. We're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
So it's only.
Good to see you, Lisa.
Been here for almost
I'm on
2
my
hours,
friends with
so.
Facebook. Like the same time.
It's
All right, we're gonna get started again.
Really tough time right now. It's really complicated.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yolanda.
I would like to remind everybody,
I never went the same time.
before we go any farther, they have reconfigured this room so that we have really sensitive microphones. And everything you say, maybe in a side conversation, is getting picked up so people in the hallway can hear it. So I just wanna remind everybody to be mindful of that. Alright? So with that, we're gonna move into our third group today. We apologize for being a little bit late, but you can imagine how this goes. And we have Charlie, so.
And we love Charlie.
We do love Charlie.
It's not his questions, it's this analytical
Take him
point
under my
after
wing.
stuff.
He lets me poke at him, and I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
Gwen's cool. None of the rest of you can.
Oh, yes, we all do though, Charlie, whether we can or not, we all do, sorry.
Alright,
Sorry,
so all
Charlie.
joking aside, welcome and go ahead and introduce yourselves and then make your presentation and we'll have questions for you afterwards.
Sounds good. Thank you. My name is Linda Hallmark. I am the Chief Judge of the Probate Court. And some of you I know and you've heard of this before. And for those of you who are new, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here today and be able to talk to you, answer questions. I was just saying to Gwen, I know you're hearing a lot of problems. And we don't expect all of our problems are going to be solved, but hopefully we can make some progress to addressing some of them and forward strides. So that's really why we're here. Ed Hutton, our wonderful court administrator, and of course, you know, Chris. I'm gonna let them talk about all of the numbers because they're much better at the numbers than I am. But on behalf of my colleagues and myself, again, I wanted to just thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. And just quickly, I thought I'd kind of go through, I don't know if you got our report, but just a little bit about what probate does. You heard from our circuit court, we work very closely with the circuit court, but probate is an independent court. We're not necessarily connected. We do have some joint business operations between our courts, but probate handles, you know, just what you would expect, wills, estates, trusts. We do adult and minor guardianships and conservatorships. We have a docket for developmentally disabled guardians. We also do mental health commitment hearings and have a whole mental health docket. So those are the major things that we do. And because in Michigan and in Oakland County, the demographics show us the population is aging, so we are increasing our caseload substantially. It's true all throughout our state, but we are really looking at the numbers in Oakland County. We have a statistic, and I think Chris might talk about it a little bit. In 2003, let's see, we had 57 positions. Oh no, I'm sorry, we had 63 positions. We currently have 57, so our staffing has gone down. Our caseload increase is 41% over the last 20 years. So we're working very hard. We're doing more with less, and you probably heard that from my circuit colleagues as well. And I'm going to let Ed perhaps have a few comments and talk about some of the numbers.
Absolutely, thank you, Judge. And thanks everybody for giving us a portion of your time today to learn a little bit about the probate court and what we do and the people we help. And I will try to not get too passionate about the people that we help because it's just in my heart and it comes from deep within, and we help the most vulnerable demographic of our society. And I don't take that for granted, and I don't think anybody in the probate court does. It's not the easiest place to work and the easiest line of work. And when I say the probate, it's not just the court, it's not just our great judges or just our great staff, but it's a lot of great attorneys that are appointed, a lot of medical professionals and social workers that encompass this great group of people that really are trying to make a difference every day in the whole world. So it encompasses all of that, and I'm proud to be a part of it. As Judge Hallmark mentioned, as far as our staffing goes, we are doing our cases continue to rise annually. From last year, they're up 5%, which I used to be able to say that every year our cases go up, our caseload goes up, and it's about 5%. That tracks pretty close year by year, but we did have a year or two during COVID where they didn't go up. So I can't say that anymore, but for the exception that is COVID, our numbers continue to climb. Everything points in the direction that they will continue to climb in the future. You've got Oakland County is great and attracting more people, so as our population grows, the use of the probate court's gonna grow. As the population ages, which is a nationwide phenomenon, call it, the baby boomers or the silver tsunami or whatever you wanna call it, that's going to continue, so the services that we provide are gonna continue to be more and more in demand. With that increase in demand, of course, is going to be an increase in the need for resources. Our space is one issue. We have outgrown our space. We currently have 3 file rooms in the basement of the courthouse because our current file room is so far insufficient for the filing that we have. So if you can picture a customer coming in and needing a file or needing a document, we have to send a staff member all the way down to the basement, which could take 20 to 30 minutes to retrieve a file or a document, which slows down the entire process and puts a huge burden on our staff to have to do that.
I should just interject that we have to maintain our files for years. I don't even know how old our oldest file is, but it could be.
Some of our requirements from SCAO are that we keep them forever. Whatever that means.
Probably 100 years for some of our files.
The earliest I think we can destroy any of them is 80 years, and some of them are listed as forever. Now, we can at a certain point switch them over to microfiche, which we do. We're working on digitizing the ones that we can, but we have to work within the parameters that SCAO or the state court administrative office sets for us. So we work within those, do the best we can to free up space, but we're just so far beyond our little file room that we have that we're now using 3 different storage rooms in the basement. If you go downstairs through the cafeteria, there's a back door and there's storage rooms back there, and that's what we're using right now. So we have active case files down there, which is just really inefficient. Puts a big strain on our staff. With that said, our court, our judges, our staff are hardworking, they're fantastic. Our judges right now, I mean, they're kind of the dream team. They're so good. And these numbers, I've included some of our performance measures that we report to SCAO just to show that. I know guardianship, conservatorship, case age rate isn't intuitive to look at that and know what it is, but I just put it in there because I want to show that we're above the big county average in our state for our guardianship and conservatorship case age rates. Oh, yeah, sorry.
They're not seeing that, sorry. Well, we have it on our screen too, but no, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Because Angela's not.
Yeah.
Same thing with civil trust case age rates. Again, percent disposed within 364 days. We're well above the SCAO initial time guidelines. Percent disposed within 728, we're above the big county average. So our great staff and our great judges are doing so well, even though our caseload goes up. We are, in most instances, in most ways, and in the most important ways, doing a fabulous job of keeping up and doing the things that we need to be doing and helping the people that we need to help. Some of our future needs, I've been watching the other presentations from the other departments just in anticipation of this today. And the whole time I'm going, yes, and that, and that. If you're in this building, I think you have the same things going on. Fire suppression, we don't have any fire suppression in our file rooms. I don't know what to ask for because I don't want to ask for too much and not get anything. It's kind of like where do you start type of things. The increased funding for court-appointed attorneys. This is a trickle down that affects any court that has appointed attorneys. So you had the MDIC come in, or MIDC come in, and they set this rate. They did a study and they set a rate, which I actually think is a fair rate. I think it's a good rate, and I completely support it. But we're in the same situation with our court-appointed attorneys that we're losing them. We have our tried and true probate attorneys that are still there and we're relying more and more on, but we're not gonna attract new attorneys. They're not gonna come in. The up and comers are not gonna be there when they can go make 3-4 times as much at a different court for another appointment. And then that's just gonna be, we always try to stay lockstep with circuit court, because if our fees were, if we paid more than them or they paid more than us, again, it's the same situation. We're gonna lose our appointed attorneys to them, or they're gonna lose them to us. So we try to stay the same. So it's just the big picture as far as appointed attorneys. If we're gonna have attorneys that are assisting and representing these vulnerable individuals, these incapacitated individuals, we gotta pay them a competitive wage. It's not complicated, but it's a lot of money. It is.
I should say too, for every case that comes in, a guardianship or a conservatorship, we're mandated to have a guardian ad litem. If the person objects to having a guardian or conservator, we're mandated to appoint counsel for them. So it's not a discretionary thing, it's in the statute and we have to abide by it. And as Ed said, often we're scrambling to get those lawyers appointed on those cases. And they're always an emergency, everything has to come in pretty quickly if somebody's in a vulnerable situation, so.
Every conversation I've had with somebody in Lansing about like the new legislation that's coming to cover MIDC, pulling the DLs under MIDC, and talked with people and I asked them, what are the plans for probate? Is anybody doing anything for probate? Because there are court-appointed attorneys there too, and people are like, probate appoints attorneys? I swear, nobody seems to identify the fact that there is counsel that gets appointed at the probate court. People forget that unless that's your area of specialty,
Yeah, and it's a deprivation of liberty issue, we're taking people's rights away, so they're entitled to have counsel.
The things that Judge Langton said, she was spot on across the board, and where are priorities and why aren't, in their case, the children the priority, and in our case, why aren't these elderly, incapacitated individuals that can't protect themselves, that can't speak for themselves, why are they not a priority? And that's kind of what we're looking at here, and I don't know the answer to that. I mean, they absolutely should be. So I would just ask that whatever considerations, I want their request to be considered and ours to be considered right along with it, because they're lockstep, one and the same. They affect one court just as much as they do the other.
Well, I think the purpose of one of the most important purposes of these hearings is issues like this get elevated. And it's not the same issue from year to year, or it might be, but the conversations and the synergies that exist, like if we hear the same thing from you for probate and the same thing for circuit court, and it's related to what's going on at the prosecutor's office and so on, it just allows us to take a more holistic, top-down kind of look at the whole situation. And you're right, we're not gonna solve it between now and budget wrap-up in 3 weeks, but it's certainly important to have the topics elevated and discussed so that as time goes on, maybe we can help you. My state rep is the head of the Judiciary Committee at the state, so maybe there's something we can, a connection that can be made. So it's those kinds of conversations that are important.
Yeah, this one's very important. And 2 years ago, this wasn't an issue that was on anybody's radar, and now it's catapulted all the way up to the top as one of the very most important. So it's a big one for us and the other courts, as you're aware.
And there's just a shortage of attorneys right now, I mean, in general.
Yeah, like all through the labor force.
Yeah,
we're feeling it too.
Well,
mental health professionals.
And COVID was a big factor. I think we sort of lost connections. The bar wasn't having events, we weren't recruiting the young lawyers like we always did. So those few years that we lost, we're really feeling now.
We lost people that didn't come back, and why, I don't know exactly, and we're doing as much as we can to attract new talent all the time, not only for that, but other things too in the court. So we're working on it, we're trying to get back to where we were, but without the funding, without the proper funding on that to be competitive, we don't have a chance, not in that area.
And our estimate was a little over $2 million to increase those attorney rates to a rate that is similar to the MIDC rate being paid currently.
Chris, would you touch on the increasing costs for medical exams and services?
Yes, we had requested, last year we were gonna have a shortfall in the medical exam, so we have to pay professionals to do evaluations on individuals as part of the court process. And we were going to be short on that line item. We were given an increase, thankfully, from I think Kyle Jen talked with our court administrator and John, my predecessor. And the only problem was it didn't carry over. So we did ask again this year for it to be carried over, and they did add that to our budget. So we are currently paying our medical professionals that do the evaluations. It was 75, we've gone to 125 because we just could not get people. So it's 125 an hour with a 4-hour maximum, so roughly $500 and then $75 if they're required to testify in court. If we send out somebody for an independent evaluation, we can expect that bill to be $2,500 to $4,000. And I see you nodding your head, you know what I'm talking about, I know. So we still don't pay much in the world of evaluations. The hourly rate that we're paying is not much. But we did receive a small increase in that line item to be able to maintain that $125, the 4-hour minimum or maximum, I mean. We expect that rate to continue to climb though and to stay competitive. By next year's budget, we may be coming back asking for more. I think we've seen, the shortages of professionals available and the you're paying $15 for unskilled labor at McDonald's, right, or Taco Bell. So for these professionals, for doctors, you've got to pay them more.
For sure. Yeah.
Up next we have furniture, and I passed out our annual report, just so you have all the information. That's also the circuit and probate court annual report, but just kind of some information on what we've been doing and how things are going and what we cover at the courts. I also passed out a photograph so you could get a closer look at what's behind me. Now, this is our mental health office, and it is a little tiny space. And I put my star employees in there because they are so busy with all of the cases and they've been extra busy lately. And they are just about on top of one another. And they have this old furniture, some of which is being actually held together by tape. And it is difficult to organize. They do their best. They reorganize it and try to make it better and try to increase the space in there. Commissioner Charles, you said at during one of the other meetings earlier this year that we're a world-leading county, and then I look at this office. I think this isn't a world-leading county. We can do better than this. And this leads to my staff being burned out in one of my most important offices, and one of the offices that I think should be most important to our community is our mental health office that is the gateway to mental health services, and they get burned out. They leave. I get turnover. I can't keep the best employees in an area where I need them because I can't give them a suitable environment where they can thrive and provide the services that we need them to do. We've asked for furniture for this, so we've never been able to get it, and we need it. They need it.
Yeah, no, we do, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, okay.
We do have duct tape on that desk up there that we didn't put on, I think that was how they repaired it. And then these plastic, from a risk perspective, the desks being elevated on these little plastic stackable risers was the solution to the fact that they were cutting the employees because it was rough. I think because the county went to these new standard chairs, you don't have them in here anywhere, but there's a new standard county chair. That standard county chair has a higher elevation, which is probably more ergonomically correct than our old office chairs. But having that new higher elevation elevates your legs, makes these old desks that are 29 inches, 28 and a half, something like that when we measured, a little lower than the standard and certainly not comfortable to sit at in the new chairs. So the solution that they gave was to elevate them. And we did ask for $38,000 to outfit the county standard sit-stand desks in this room. This is a public room, people come into it, they go to the front counter, you can't see it, but it's up here. And it is where we have our public lookup for probate records. So this is what the public sees when they come to probate court.
I
if
just
they come
wanted
to mental health.
to indicate, Chris, I mean, just today I had a case come in, a father with a suicidal son comes into this office and, you know, we're kind of saying to him, it's not really that important to us because this is, you know, this is what you see when you walk in the door. So this man comes in this terrible crisis, wants to get help for his son, and this is how we service them. So breaks my heart.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have a dress code because we want people to know that when they come in and they're going through what's probably the worst day of their life, that we take that seriously and that we're competent and they can count on us to work with them and work them through this. This is similar to that, and this is, you know, it just doesn't reflect that.
It's not just about us and our staff, but, you know, I think about all of those people that come through our system. And again, I think we're saying something to them in terms of how we value their problems.
So relative to your furniture, you've talked to facilities, you've made requests to them? Because when they were in here a little earlier, they were talking about having to buy new furniture because what's there is not ergonomic. I mean, I'm wondering, are you part of that or?
We've had discussions with them, we've asked, I've had a lot of discussions with the facility.
It's not deemed, furniture's not deemed to be broken at this point, and it is on the horizon.
Break it.
The last message that we
Don't
got
do it
from
when you're being
facilities-
videoed.
And Jason and Ed are wonderful, and they're always very helpful, so I don't wanna say anything bad about them. And I gave them a picture as they left, and I said, guys, we're gonna be showing this picture. How unfortunate that we went in this order, you know?
That's a good one.
But Jason, the last conversation that we had, he indicated that his budget had been cut. And I don't know why or what his budget looks like, but he indicated his budget had been cut for these types of things. And so he would put us on his plan, and I believe that he would, but we were looking at, I think, 26 or 27 to get furniture. So because he really, all of his budget, his entire, you know, budget was already spoken for in 3 projects. He had like $4 million and all of it was gone.
Yeah, what a tough position they're in,
Yeah.
and by no means this is to blame them or disparage them. I mean,
Right.
gosh, as I've been listening to these, I realize there's so many concerns and so many needs, and they're there with, you know, only so much they can do. So completely understand where they're coming from as well. And then this has been an issue. It's hard to just look at this and know what's going on here, but actually this is our service counter. And there is nothing securing this counter, not even a swinging door, anything. We have children come behind the counter sometimes when they get away from their parents. Every time there's a situation where there's one of the, a shooting or one of these violent attacks that happen way too often, a whole different thing, but I get emails from my staff and they say, we're not safe. There is nothing keeping somebody, and in a court, any court, it's a very emotional charged environment oftentimes, and we have had incidents, luckily where nobody's been injured, but we have had some incidents, several, where the deputies have to come in and take somebody out, and there's nothing from keeping somebody out away from our staff or keeping our staff safe. There are times that where I'm in my office after hours and there has been somebody coming through the work spaces and I can hear them saying, hello, hello, and I go out there and because there was nothing to keep them there. Now, originally I had a grand plan and we were gonna wall it all off and it was gonna be secure and it was gonna keep germs out and attackers out and it was gonna be great. And that was, I was told right away, like there's definitely no funding for that. So okay, so all right, well let's build something solid here, some doors and some walls, and that didn't happen. And I've asked for just some swinging doors, at least temporarily, until we can improve that, and just to delineate to the public that this is you're going into the personnel, private work area only from here. And still haven't been able to get that. And I checked my emails. I know just the swinging doors, it goes back a year and a half. I think March 20th, I think was when I asked for that. March 20th, 2022. So it's just something that my staff's not safe, and when they come to me, I can't promise them that they are. I can hope that nobody's gonna get a weapon through the security, but I can't tell them some strong individual is not gonna pick up a letter opener or stapler and walk back there because there's nothing stopping them from doing that.
We also, as you can see there, there's a cashier, no security at all.
And nothing.
There's a cash register,
So
yep, right behind.
If you want some
behind that.
money,
And
just,
well-
go get it.
Yeah, we did move the printer closer because the printer used to be located like where that lady is right there behind her. That used to be the printer that the cashier had to go to get the receipt. So they physically had to walk away from the cash area to get the receipt. So we were able to get a little bit of change, but passive security with a swinging door, anything like that would be at least helpful. At least it gives people the idea that you shouldn't come back here. This is where the records are. This is where the employees go. And I think Jason also indicated that this was a more secure project, was in the works or being planned, but again, his budget did not facilitate being able to do that at this time. It was years, we were getting in line, which I swear I thought, Commissioner Charles, that you had seen our presentation prior to some of your questions.
Spot on, yes, yeah, so many things she said earlier, I'm like, yes, I'm gonna write that down.
Are the departments okay with that getting in line? I think that was you who asked that. And, no, not necessarily. We have needs that, everybody thinks their stuff is the most important, but these are some basic things. And it's worth noting that the rest of probate back behind where that front counter is, got new desks during COVID. So the county executive did give them new desks during COVID, in part because we had to get people 6 feet apart and the old desks did not allow that because of the configuration limitations. So we did get new desks for them. So now the people that work over in mental health are the only people that don't have a more modern workspace, something that's ergonomically correct.
Okay. So I guess, there's things we could ask for that would be luxuries. I think this is my sixth one of these meetings, and early on it was more staff and things that weren't such a pressing have to have like safety, but that's where we're at right now is looking at safety. And I think the thing that looms over all of this is because our space is inadequate, so all right, how much do we put into making this space adequate? How much do we put into securing this? Or do we look a little further down the road and figure out a long-term solution? Because I really don't think that our space right now is our future. I don't think that we can survive there a whole lot longer and keep making it work. We keep finding workarounds, but that's a losing proposition. So I think the big picture needs to be addressed at some point. But in the meantime, these are our basic needs that we ask that you consider for us.
Have you talked to Homeland Security at all about your safety situation here?
We were actually going to, and we were gonna talk to risk management, because I think that those desks on risers present a risk to the county from an insurance perspective. If somebody bumps into them and knocks one down on somebody, that's a problem. So
that would be my suggestion, is to talk to them and see if they can help you with this, because what they told us in the facilities meeting is this person who's responsible for safety, their budget is also the same budget as Homeland Security. Like, it got moved from one department to the other, but I would talk to them and see if they can help you figure out a way to, you're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're talking few tens of thousands of dollars, and so
was our estimate on.
I would see if they could help you.
Thank you, good suggestion, we will follow up.
Absolutely. This is basically just a rundown of things that we've already touched on, so I won't belabor the point. Statewide e-filing, that is something that we're continue. I can't believe I'm still saying this after I don't know how many years. Every year I come and say, hey, we're on the cusp of e-filing and it's gonna help us and make us more efficient. And we're still not there yet. There's still only one in the state, Ottawa, still the only pilot in the state. I am going to jump on that as soon as the opportunity is available. I wanna get rid of every piece of paper in the place, but until they allow it, that's where we're at. Staffing, we already talked about the increase, and we expect that to continue, and then our space issues, we've just outgrown our space, but we've already talked about that, so. With that said, thank you very much for listening to our presentation. Unless anybody else has anything to add, we'll open it up for questions. Great.
Okay, first up, we have Commissioner
I don't
Rahman,
have anything.
followed by Commissioner Cavell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, you know, again, everything I said in the last presentation is true here as well. I mean, really, I don't want to rehash all my same talking points. My first just knee-jerk reaction is, what is the executive response? When you're asking for $26,000 of furniture, are you getting a no to that? Just so I'm clear and understand where we're coming from. Is that where we're at?
It was denied, it was
Yeah,
not
we
approved.
presented it, we went over and we met, and we had gave a presentation on our needs.
With these pictures showing things on risers.
I think we took these pictures
saying we don't have
exactly from our
employee
presentation.
safety.
Yes.
Somebody with a gun or whoever, a letter opener can come right back here. We can fix it for $26,000 and you're denied.
More than 38 for the furniture, I don't know exactly, depending on what they do for the security. I don't have an estimate on the security. But I think the executive's response was that you need to talk to facilities about that. So in facilities' responses, we don't have any money in our budget for this, but we'll put you on the list. You know, that's kind of the response. So we're sort of in a, you know, a circle, yeah.
Right, they, facilities said that they didn't have the money for it, so we went to the executive and asked them to put the money in our budget if that would work, and.
Like a one-time thing.
Right, and then, so, I mean, they were receptive, of course, during our meeting with them, they were great, but then eventually when their recommendation came through, it was denied by way of their recommendation.
So that was part one. Part two, 10% decrease in staffing, 41% increase in caseload in the last 20 years. Is that attorneys, paralegals, admin staff? What are we talking about there?
Our staff consists mostly of office support clerks because we do have paper files, office support clerks and deputy registers. And so that's the vast majority of the staff we find that I can think of, and we lost.
So we kind of call our counter staff, it's not the judges and our staffs, but it's the support people.
Supervisory staff too.
Right.
They used to have more supervisors, and now we had like Julie and that's it. There used to be 2 Julies, for instance, at one time, and there were more clerical staff to help and more supervisory staff to help train and assist, and you know, just trying to get destruction done, right? I think is a challenge.
And I came along in 2018, and I believe in 2008 is when we lost a lot of our staff, or about
When
in
the
that
big
window,
recession
so
hit
I'm just kind of going by what I've been told and where our staff has gone, but that's
So
about
these are not super costly positions, I guess is where I'm going.
No,
These are not high level
These are
positions.
high level,
These are
high
actually about our lowest level positions in the court.
And how many are we looking for in terms of number? Would you
Oh my
guesstimate?
gosh, I think,
As far as need,
yeah, if we had 4, it would be amazing.
4 low end.
If we had, it would, you know, if I could put 2 more people and add to that mental health office with the old furniture, it would, I was over there talking to them today saying, okay, I have this presentation, I'm gonna go to the board, what can you guys are in a place of need more than anywhere else. What can I do for you? What can I ask for you? And they said, gosh, we need more help. We need more help for sure. The cases are increasing, they just keep going up, and there's only so much we can do. There's only so many of us. So, and especially if one of them's out or 2 of them's out, it just overwhelms whoever's left because there's so few. So, yeah.
And again, you know, when someone's in a mental health crisis, it's not appropriate to wait 3 weeks. You know, we really need to deal with their problem right now.
And then my last one's an easy one. So with the services you provide, are there any fees paid or costs recouped in the process of doing what you do? I don't know much about each division of the legal system, so I wasn't sure in the probate world. Is there any revenue that you're generating or costs coming back to you that could
There's some with filing fees and the fees that we pay for copies. I'll let Chris touch on that. I think she's a little more of an expert on it than I am.
Many of our fees, we do have revenue that comes in. I don't think you would consider us a donor department. We're not bringing in more than we are expending in services. But we do have revenue that comes in, what were we last year for revenue? Close to, well, for 2022, close to $1 million that came in. Most of the fees that we charge are mandated fees, and they are split different ways, like some stays with the court, some goes back to the state. I don't know that we have any totally discretionary fees that we charge. I know yesterday the Circuit County Clerk mentioned marriage fees and what she charges to marry somebody or expedite that.
Could those
You know,
fees be?
I don't think we could, given our,
Yeah.
the individuals we help. I mean,
No.
I just don't
There,
think that
yeah,
we
there are
could.
filing fees, for instance, if you're opening a probate estate, a decedent's estate. We can't charge for our mental health work at all.
So it's not something subject to revision, I guess, or increase based on.
They've already seen an increase in the filing fees actually for e-filing to help support the state e-filing system, which they have not benefited from and none of our citizens have either. So.
Okay, all right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, next up I have Commissioner Cavell.
Yeah, Ajay, thanks for the setup, because I wanted to ask your revenue, your charges for services went from $940 to being expected to be $518. What is the expected drop in those?
So I wish I could tell you better because I didn't work on the FY23 budget, really, it's the 24 budgets. My predecessor was still in place primarily. Although I had some interaction with it, I don't know what it was that went down. I can see that they projected gross estate fees to be less.
Yeah.
They projected some of the revenues to go down. The copy fee, they projected to go down, but I don't know that is, I think we might be running ahead, actually. My guess is that FY22, the budget was probably lower than what they brought in as well. They probably just didn't increase the revenue projections for 23. And I know we have some staff here from fiscal, do you have our FY22 recommended revenue in front of you? For probate, I can try and, actually.
I mean, the comparison, looking at the 940,000, it was based on actual activity.
But what was our recommended in the budget for FY22? Do you know? If not, I'm sure I can find it on the website. But my guess is that we were also over what that projection was in 22. And we probably just didn't raise 23's projection.
What is the logic behind that?
I don't know, I wasn't part of preparing that per se, but I think that this money goes back to the county general fund, so it doesn't directly come to the probate court, so it's not like probate court would lose money out of their budget if their revenues were lower necessarily.
Sure. Okay. And to what Ajay was saying, or Commissioner Rahman was saying, right, none of these fees are things that you could either legally or just comfortably feel okay with raising?
Yeah, it's not discretionary towards us. And basically everything that we do, every fee that we charge and every service that we provide is all statutorily required. I don't think there's things that we could do that we would like to do that we don't have the ability to offer additional services beyond what is absolutely required by statute for us. So we stay within those parameters.
Okay.
And you're dealing with some really low income people sometimes. You're dealing with elderly people on set incomes, people with developmentally disabled children, you know.
Yeah. The push right now is just so much with to increase access to the court. If anything, the push or the trend that I see is to open that door by going the other way with fees to open the courts up as much as we possibly can.
Do you have like waivers or fee reduction opportunities for people?
Sure.
Or so people can file with you and it'll
Yes.
cost them $0?
Absolutely.
Okay. I also was curious, cause this happened with circuit court too, was talking about MIDC and the court-appointed attorneys. Help me understand the.
Jessica Hallmark. Sorry,
Sorry.
I thought I turned her off.
The changeover with MIDC and court-appointed attorneys, that I was under the impression this is like a transitory thing. That we're in the in 10 years, there will be mostly MIDC attorneys representing indigent people, and court-appointed attorneys, there will be those, but that won't be the main thing.
Well,
So
and
what's the changeover really like?
We won't have MIDC, because that doesn't apply to us, but our attorneys are going to go in that direction based on the discrepancy and the compensation for the services that they provide. If we continue to offer what we're offering now, there's no incentive for them to even start probate as a new attorney coming out, and we need to attract and retain new attorneys, new up-and-comers to replace the ones that as they retire, and they're never gonna do that when they come into the workforce and say, okay, I can be appointed over here and make 3 times as much as I can for probate, I'm not gonna do it. So we just need to compete there, and we need to get ahead of it and not wait until we get to that point where we don't have anybody to help the people that we serve and then throw our hands up in the air and not know what to do. We can see that this is coming, we wanna get ahead of it.
Even though we have mandated attorneys that we must appoint, our cases are not criminal, so we're not part of that statute. All of our cases are civil.
Understood.
And there's no legislation, nothing planned to address it from our end for the probate court and the attorneys that we're required by statute to appoint.
Okay, now, didn't you have an earlier slide that said you're paying attorneys 110 to 140 and that's competitive?
That's the MIDC rate that we need to compete with.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Which is not a bad rate, and for a private practice attorney, I mean, that's half maybe, I mean, so that's still, when you look at it in that regard, I think Judge Langton referred to it as attorney land, that's still not real high. But it's a lot higher than what we're currently paying.
Right.
Okay.
Our rate the probate rate would be more comparable when you look at the hours of preparation that somebody has to do, and then preparing the documentation and the orders after a hearing, and then participating in the hearing, visiting the individual. It's gonna be more comparable to that $20 an hour figure that Judge Langton gave you. They're extraordinary, if they have extraordinary fees or something special that they do, they can request up to $60 an hour, but they have to prepare something special and show that they did something special to even qualify for that rate. And, law school's expensive.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, I thought I had one other person, but.
I had it up on it. On the revenues, on gross estate fees, that's the inventory fees, right? That probably hasn't changed since the 70s. It's not it's state law.
Do you want me to admit to being around in the 70s?
I think that gross estate fee.
Yeah, it hasn't changed, you're right, it hasn't
has not
changed.
changed since the 70s.
Right, but then again, that's out of our control.
So on estates, whatever the inventory is, there's an inventory fee set by state law that funds the court. And it hasn't changed since the 70s.
Should take a trip to Lansing, Phil.
Well, the judiciary committee person might help us.
Yes, that's one who could, not that I'm for raising fees, but the reality is, since the 70s, things have changed.
Gone up a little.
There's one that has not changed. 40.
And that's a different type of fee,
50 years,
but it's coming out of the
but it's
estate.
coming, that is, the value of the inventory is funding the court.
Yeah, that's a different type of fee as opposed to somebody opening up their wallet and paying out.
Yes, it's based on the estate.
Filing fee,
The
it's based
estate
on the
is
amount
there,
that's
and it's a
there.
very, very small percentage. And that is one statewide that can help.
Sure. Yeah, completely agree.
Okay, I don't have any other commissioners requesting to speak. I think that's the probate court presentation for
Thank you.
today unless you have something else you wanna say.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
The only thing that I would add, and thank you, committee members, that if you have any questions, if you ever need anything of the probate court, give me a call. Look up my number and give you my card. I'm always happy to help and answer questions.
I will say that.
Tours.
Yes, anytime you want to
Yes,
come and visit us,
absolutely.
please feel free.
I was telling Judge Hallmark, my family recently had an opportunity to be processed through the probate court.
Yep.
No details, just, you know, my family had a situation, and when it was all said and done, they were really happy with how it all worked out, and they felt like the courts had treated them all professionally. There were more than 2 people involved, and, you know, and so I was happy to hear that.
I am too. That's great to hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
again.
sharing that. Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, up next, we have the district court. We're gonna move right into that, but if anybody needs a little snack, go ahead and help yourself. And that's true for all of you who are coming to visit us too.
They're delightful, you only have
20 degree differences.
I know, out in the hall. I know, it's like 3, so I have to wear
Rugged,
so I have to wear 10, you know. Nice to see you, nice to see you, thank you.
You got plenty of time. Or we scheduled for 4:30.
She's good.
Yeah, I remember when you say 5, I say 10.
Yeah, no overtime.
Yeah, like, we'll have to request it on the, we'll have to request it on the budget hearings, right?
We should get paid time and a half for budgets, right?
Well, maybe Aaron and I should
For all the
have
extra-
to do that
for all
in
the
as a
extra money that's
request.
out
Well, actually, I mean, all the trips up here, we will get a little boost.
Yeah, driving, yeah, man.
You're going back to the county?
And then tomorrow's a long day. And you guys doing something in the morning?
We're in Ottawa town.
Oh, you're going to Ottawa town. What time's that at?
10:30.
You're gonna be gone 10:30.
What's tomorrow?
Thursday's all budget.
So when?
Budget hearings at once.
Just in protest. Oh.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just in
Yeah, that's
protest,
what I was
I'm not
doing.
going. I think we should all
Yeah,
go.
we have budget hearings
I go
tomorrow.
back.
Yeah, right.
Then we have budget hearings at 1:00.
Yeah, and
That's
then we
right.
have caucus at 5 and board meeting at 6.
A little melancholy.
Ottawa at 10:30 a.m. if you want.
That's what I'm saying, yeah,
We're
it's
finally working
neoliberal
full-time.
economic development. It's never
But my
gonna,
date, but
it's nice, but it ain't the answer.
I know.
Yeah, we are still on.
So,
I know.
but hey,
It's all
that's where we are.
right, That's our job though, the finance, the budget's one of the biggest jobs, so.
You all knew it in your heart, but it is what
I'll
it is.
add that on it, so.
I didn't know this.
Sorry, it doesn't hurt.
Not this, but.
For that.
Ah.
Start the meeting.
You doing the electric vehicle summit?
Thanks, Bob.
I cannot.
I don't know how you can either, I would
No,
know.
I know, look at that. It's at 10.
Is it tomorrow?
It's 10.
Yeah, no, I can't go because I got this other thing, but I would have
No,
liked
but
to
you
do
guys
it.
got a good budget.
Just, yeah, that's what we like.
All right.
No.
I think we have all the
Cute.
commissioners. Commissioner Powell, hello, glad you're still with us. Commissioner Powell is joining us.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm still here.
All right, good. If you have questions, just, you know, text me or
Just spread out.
anybody here and we'll hook you in, so.
Yep, I've been okay. I know the rules, you know. I know because I'm virtual, so I just been listening. So thank you so much for letting me have that option.
Okay, thanks. All right, next up, we have our district court. So it's a day full of courts here. And we want to welcome you. We're gonna let you guys make your presentation and then we'll have questions from the floor after you're done.
Thank you. I'm Joe Fabrizio, and I'm the Chief Judge of the 52nd District Court. Thank you for having us today, and thank you for running on time. It's great to see.
We're trying, we're only a little behind.
Well, that's practically on time. Yeah, so.
Judge's time.
Not our judges. On time.
All right, so in any event, we obviously have appeared before you many times in the past, and you know my team, I think, relatively well, but I'll go ahead and introduce everybody. We have 4 different buildings in the 52nd District. It covers geographically approximately 75% of Oakland County. Obviously, we're a county-funded court, which is why we're here. And Division 1 is in Novi, and Alex Black is the court administrator there. Division 2 is in Clarkston, where I sit, and Brett Derry is the court administrator in Clarkston. Division 3 is in Rochester, and Amy Luce is the court administrator in Rochester. And Division 4 is in Troy, which is where Jennifer Phillips sits. We have a number of very exciting initiatives that we're working on right now. And I'm gonna turn it over to Alex Black to kind of go through some of those exciting changes that we're implementing and some of the challenges that we're facing.
So the 52nd District Court recognizes there are great efforts that go into balancing the needs of all county departments. So we recognize we're not the only ones, although we would like, everybody wants to believe they're the most important, but we understand that there's only so much money to spread around. So this cycle, we again requested construction of a new court facility in Clarkston, the 2nd District Court. The deputy court administrators that the 2 deputy court administrators we had requested last year, and the new thing that we requested this year were the 3 IT liaisons to assist with the new and upcoming IT projects such as e-filing, which we've been talking about for several years here. We finally were selected. So that's just gonna be for our civil divisions. So that's for all the civil filings. That's supposed to be implemented and started up by the end of this year. This, not fiscal year, this actual year, which is great. The criminal side, it will be a couple of years probably before we get that, but we're really excited to be selected from Scale for this. We're also gonna get our video courtrooms, which Circuit Court has had for many, many, many years, and we're really excited about that too. Probation iPad check-in was one of the things that we had mentioned previously as a way to offset some of the staff that we had given up, and through the ARPA funds, we were able to get some money for that, and so that's gonna start up hopefully by the end of the year. And the BIS automated backup system, so we need some backup systems for our recording system. So those are the things that we needed the 3 IT liaisons to assist with. In working with the county administration and Kyle Jen, we have been able to accomplish some of our needs. Through the approval of Kyle Jen, we are in the process of implementing the ARPA funds for our automated iPad check-in, as I mentioned, working with the new IT team. There seems to be a lot of shake-up there, a new team, and we're really excited about who we've met and dealt with so far. We're hiring 3 contract positions for our IT request to assist with our transition in our civil division to e-filing and video courtrooms. So we were denied those 3 positions, but it was suggested to us that we could request some contract positions to try to get us through, or just through. So we were happy that it was not a flat out no, and so we've gotten some approval for that. We're in the process of trying to get that going, so we'll be coming back to you again in the near future for that. And since we last met, we have continued to improve our access for court users through Zoom and automated services. The one good thing about the pandemic, I mean, I'm sure there's a few things, but very few, but this is one of them. We still do some Zoom and allow better access for everyone in the court system. And we're really looking forward to e-filing rolling out in December 2023. Our new, we'll have new workstations for the public to accommodate everyone. So if somebody's trying to e-file and they don't have a computer at home, they can come to the court and we can assist them with that. We still have some great needs in our Clarkston Courthouse. The last update, as everyone is aware, that the courthouse is on the list of capital improvement projects with no projected date. We were told that they're aware, administration is aware, it's a need. But we still have the space, security, and confidentiality HIPAA issues that we had previously.
I will stop you there just to say that I know that the property that we were holding with the potential for this courthouse, they have decided is really not appropriate for the courthouse, and so we're gonna sell the property and still keep talking about what makes sense for the court.
So the sign is finally down.
Yeah.
The dream has ended.
The sign that said,
Once the
"Keep
sign
the sign
down,
in the Clarkston District Court."
Yes, for Commissioner Rahman, I don't know if you know that, but we had a sign up for,
Many
if you
years.
drove down Dixie Highway, from 2007 until I believe sometime last year, we had a sign that said it was the future courthouse.
Yeah.
After 16 years, we realized that's not the future sign. So don't stop by there if you were thinking about that.
It's a lot of engagement.
So we understand the Clarkston Courthouse is a huge cost, and we're hoping that a suitable interim solution could be reached, and the alternatives such as maybe renting additional office space in the area. Renting the additional office space doesn't really help the security issues they have necessarily, because if you ever drive through there, you can see that anybody can, well, they can park, I can park right next to Judge Fabricio. anybody can. Additional office space would at least give, alleviate the issues, the HIPAA issues that we have and staff, probation officers sharing offices and hearing everybody's private information. Altering the current space is another option possibly with a second story. Again, it doesn't solve a lot of the security issues as far as the parking goes, but it would be better than being on top of each other. Or renting a new facility when the lease expires in May of 2026, a more suitable space. We're open to all options to improve the safety, security, and comfort of employees and patrons, obviously. As a brief update though, our caseloads are slowly rebounding post-pandemic. Our treatment courts continue to expand. We're very proud of our our mental health court, which everybody supported us on. That's flourishing to the point where I think I'm gonna ask for an expansion of the program in the next grant process, asking for another probation officer maybe, so we can get more people into it, because it's been very successful. Our veterans court, obviously, we've had that for a long time. Our sobriety courts and our drug courts, they're all, they've all been very helpful, I think, to our people all around Oakland County, because we do accept people from other courts and other jurisdictions. We've got our graduation coming up in each of our courts, and our joint mental health court continues to grow, and we're gonna send you invitations. Again, I encourage you all, I know some of you have been so gracious to come. Charlie, it was great to see you there and Gwen. So anybody who'd like to come, it would be great.
It's a really positive, moving experience. For any of you who have not been to one of those graduations yet, it's there. I know Phil has been to at least a couple with me. It just gives you hope. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think it's for the judges that I know that do it, I think it's one of their favorite things that they do, right? So as always, you're welcome to attend our graduation and see the fruits of the grants you've assisted us with in accepting every year. We continue to serve over 50 police departments and 9 district courts, including 44th Berkeley and Royal Oak, 45th Royal Oak Township, Huntington Woods, Pleasant Ridge, and Oak Park, 48th District Court, West Bloomfield, Bloomfield Hills, Bloomfield Township, Birmingham, Kego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, Orchard Lake, 50th Pontiac, 51st Waterford, as well as our own 4 divisions in the weekend arraignment program. We do, just for the newer commissioners, and you may know this already, so please don't be insulted if I'm repetitive, but we, the 52nd, we hold it at my division, but it's a 52nd effort. We hold all of the weekend arraignments to get people processed and arraigned in a proper amount of time through the 52nd District Courts for all of those courts and jurisdictions that I mentioned. We do that every single weekend and every single holiday. So we essentially work 365 days a year. There isn't one holiday or one weekend that we don't run that program and make sure that everybody's rights are preserved and we process people through. So our performance measures, which are public record through SCAO, indicate our judges meet and exceed case age and clearance rate expectations, and we're getting ready to launch our public satisfaction surveys this fall, and they were great last time, so we're hoping that we're serving the public properly. So that's where we're at. That's a good report.
Okay. All right, do we have any folks lined up? Yes, Commissioner Rahman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First is just a quick newbie question. With your introduction, I didn't catch, so I understand circuit court, I understand probate court. Could you just clarify for me quickly 40,000-foot view district court? So I understand kind of how that interplays with the other two?
Not you've never gotten to take it.
Yeah, I know, because you're a good man. Do you wanna tell them?
Sure, so the district court is, there's 2 trial courts in Michigan, circuit and district. And the circuit court handles any civil controversies in excess of $25,000. Anything under $25,000 is the jurisdiction of the district court. All landlord-tenant cases go through the district court regardless of the amount of controversy. And all crimes go through the district court. However, if there are felonies punishable by more than 1 year in jail, then ultimately, if there's enough evidence, they're sent up to circuit court for further proceedings and trial. And then this is a question that comes up every year, so if you weren't here in previous years, you might be scratching your head as to why we're only talking about the district court that serves 75% of Oakland County, and what about the other 25%? Well, we do cover most of that other 25% on the weekends, but this is a Category 2, Class 2 district court, which many years ago, when the district courts were formed, about 50 years ago, every city and township was given the opportunity to fund their own court if they wanted to. And if they chose to exercise that, then it was a Class 3 district court, which you have in Pontiac and Bloomfield and Royal Oak. Those more populated areas back 50 years ago, they had the financial wherewithal and the I guess the motivation to sort of have more control over their district court, and they opted to fund their district court. Any of those courts that did not get formed by their city or township, then it fell to the county, and the state said, all right, a Class 2 district court, you can be funded by the county. And so Oakland County stepped up and took responsibility for the remaining 75% of Oakland County, which 50 years ago was mostly farmland, you know, and rural areas, but now is every bit as populated as those other areas. And then those areas in, you know, northern Michigan or places that did not have the county resources to fund their court, by default, they were a Class 1 district court that was funded by the state. And so that's why you have sort of this disjointed, in a way, funding of district courts throughout the state. But needless to say, the 52nd District Court is the second largest district court in the state of Michigan, second only to the 36th District Court, which is in Detroit, county funded, and yet we work very cooperatively with those other district courts around Oakland County to make sure that we are all on an even playing field with providing resources and services to the public.
Thank you.
It was an excellent explanation, not to interrupt, that was great.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate
I
it.
like hearing that every year, just then I remember it, you know?
Yeah. My other question was that we heard from circuit court and probate court, and I know both of them had issues as far as staffing and compensation and those kind of things. It sounds like your needs may be slightly different because you're more on the CIP side of things and facilities. Are you also affected with the same challenges when it comes to staffing and compensation from district court standpoint?
Yes, I'll let the court administrators speak to that,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, our challenges are more, so when, as he mentioned, when we were developed many, many years ago, the hierarchy, the setup was suitable for then. So our two larger district courts, 52-1 and 52-3, we have a deputy court administrator because at most places you go to, there's a boss, and then there's somebody to cover the boss when the boss is gone, and then there's some supervisors. There's a big gap in at 52-2 and 52-4. So I learned this firsthand last, actually it's been a year and a half ago now. I had to cover in Troy at the 52-4 district court because we suddenly didn't have a court administrator there. And while we were trying to obtain a fantastic one, which we got, Jen. While we were waiting for that to occur, I was covering at both courts because they didn't have a deputy court administrator. In my opinion, I think in all of our opinion, you shouldn't ever have a situation where a person, if she were to go, God forbid, on leave, you can't ask somebody who's a supervisor 1 or supervisor 2, who's really been tasked with supervising the clerks in the office to run the court, handle the budget, all of the facility issues, because we are on our own, because we're separate, right, from the county. So we are out there on our own to deal with facility issues on our own. Facilities can't just lend us someone or run out to us or whatever. So it's not proper to ask those people who were not properly trained to deal with personnel issues and those types of things if somebody were to go out on leave, right? So our staffing issues are a little different than probate, I think, in the sense that while it's always helpful to have a couple more clerks, it would be helpful in our situation to have the IT liaison, since we have one for 4 district courts. and we're all in 4 different corners. And we have IT needs constantly. There's 203, I think, employees, if you count up all the judges, law clerks, and then the rest of the staff. 203 people in 4 different corners of the county with one IT liaison that's housed in my courthouse, and which is great for me, but not great for everyone else, you know. And so these are the staffing issues that we had brought up to them, that we need a little more a proper what do you call it? I don't want to say hierarchy, but the proper tree of command, chain of command, and we also need proper IT support, particularly with our new IT issues that are finally coming to fruition. We've been asking for a long time, and it's great, but we can't ask this one person to handle all of those things. So that would be more of our challenge, I think, if I were to speak for all of us.
And this has been requested in previous years?
Oh, yeah. The IT liaison, I have to admit, we just asked the 3 IT liaisons to cover the other 3 district courts. We just asked for this year. The deputy court administrator, this is the 3rd year that we've made that request and been denied.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, Commissioner Cavell.
Oh, I got a good one
Oh,
for
good,
you.
I can't wait. Bring it to me.
So the charges for services in 2022 were 8.6 million. And in 23 they were 11.6 million, and now they're gonna be 9.7. What's with this kind of like?
Which charges for services are you talking about?
Just the whole.
Our revenue, are you talking about our revenue?
Yeah.
The actual or the budgeted?
Well, both. So the actual in 22 was 8.6 million. Then in 23 it was 11.6, and now you're expected to, I guess, bring in 9.7. So just what's the reason for that kind of up and down? Because it also, when you look at it, it goes through a few of the line items, right? It's not like one thing went way up or one thing went way down. It's like everything kind of seems to be kind of going up. Sorry, I was trying to give you an example. Okay. The department analyst should know.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Okay, where's
So Tony, he's on remotely, so. He's on remote.
That's why we have Mike.
I'd say, with the pandemic, everything, it's dependent on caseload. During the pandemic, everything slowed down, and then when we could ramp back up, it was.
Was that this year?
It was, the revenue you would see a little bit after, like, it wouldn't be right in time with it, it would come right after, like with the caseload coming up and then the revenue collection and, I mean,
your ordinance was 3.8 in 2022 actual, and then you 5.5, so that's the tickets and everything were down from COVID.
Right.
That's $2 million.
Right, I mean, we did rebound, so I just didn't realize it was that much, I have to be honest.
Okay.
Because, so COVID, obviously, we had a plummet.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't taking people. And then there was the rebound, like he mentioned, and now we're still on an uptick, but then there's been legislative changes such as the legalization of marijuana. Some of those things were mentioned, I know before, but I'm being totally honest, I didn't realize it was like that many million difference. Because I really look at more of my own, and I didn't realize cumulatively it was that much different, but.
Clean slate legislation as well.
Yes,
It
clean slate
overnight eliminated a massive amount of receivables, at least on paper. And there is a percentage of those receivables that we continue to collect. But then now with this legislation where the records are expunged regardless of whether they completed probation or not, regardless if they ever paid all their old fines and costs, it gets expunged and all that gets eradicated. The only thing that survives is restitution that we can still collect that goes to the victim. So that would have wiped out a lot of receivables as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't realize we rebounded that much after COVID. To be honest, I didn't realize it was $3 million, but that's very possible. And because I've never, in my 28 years, I've never seen it as slow as it was in 2020 and part of 2021. But most recently, if you visit the court, there's, the parking lot's filled again. But we still will always have, it will never be in my opinion, at least not in my career there anymore, it will never be what it was before. Our collectibles, what we used to have in revenue before was far higher than what we are now. You know, whether that was right or wrong is really relevant now, but because of COVID, because of legislative changes, we will never be where we were.
Okay, thank you.
I think we all made a big effort to make sure that the revenue projections were realistic.
Right,
and
we have,
in line with what we usually do.
Ironically, I was in here when Ed Sutton remarked in response to many of your questions that the trend really is going to better access to the courts, and going hand in hand with that is and you asked about fee waiver applications and processes for that, things like that. Going hand in hand to better access to the court involves foregoing many of these reimbursable expenses that we used to pursue in the past.
I also liked what Ed said about we can only charge what's by statute. We can't come up with we can't make up fees. We're limited by what's in statute.
I mean, even we were talking about this, we all do weddings at our courthouses, and not every court, you're not required to do that, but we do it as a service, right, to the public. And so many courts don't do it, especially post-pandemic. So we do take people from other areas of the county. At my court, we'll take really anybody from anywhere who wants to get married, but we can only charge $10 for that service. Well, the magistrate that we're paying for that 1 hour, we far pay more than $10, and the court recorder that's in there, you know, and the clerk that does the paperwork. But that $10 fee has been the same $10 fee when I started 28 years ago, and it's just something that they said, this is the most you can charge. So that's what we charge.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's.
We need to do group wedding.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. They tell you that you can only charge $10. Is that the state?
Yep.
By statute, it's a
Yeah, by
law.
statute, yeah.
Okay, cause Lisa Brown was talking about it yesterday, and
$10.
she only charges $10, but we were talking about, well, maybe you should charge 25.
Can't.
She can't.
She didn't tell
Okay, so
us.
maybe she can, but.
She cannot.
Needs
She
change
can't
at the
either?
state.
No, she cannot. When I first started as court administrator, that was my great idea. Well, why aren't we charging more for this? And everybody's like, nope, and that's what it is.
Wow. Whoever's up.
So if anybody's looking to get married, it's only $10. It's the cheapest thing you can do in the county right now, I think.
That's so funny. Okay, is there anybody else who has a question?
It's a good
I had a
presentation.
question about the magistrate that's there on the weekends for everybody else. Do we get paid for that by the other courts?
No, we do not.
No.
So we do that for everybody.
For service
for
for
everybody.
everyone in Oakland County, huh?
What do you think about that?
2 clerks, we pay 2 clerks and they get overtime. Magistrate does not get overtime because they are straight, they're part-time PT&E. And so on average, it costs about $750 for us every weekend and holiday that we do it.
And how many of the people that come before the magistrate are from us, from the?
Percentage-wise, from just the 52nd? I would have to look at it, but I would say about 25%. I mean, we do probably about 25%. So last weekend, we did between Saturday and Sunday, a little higher than our average, and so we arraigned about 50 people between those 2 days. It's been going up actually, the number of people that we're handling every weekend. We get a lot from Pontiac. I mean, a lot, and part of that is, and I don't want to talk out of turn, it's just something that I know because I run the weekend program, that for courts that don't arraign people on Fridays or arraign them past a certain time, anybody who gets arrested past that time is gonna go into the bucket of people that we have to arraign over the weekend. So it's been falling on us quite a bit. And I have talked to the chief judge there, and they, they're doing the best they can, and we understand that.
I mean,
Well, I'm just wondering if longer term, we shouldn't be charging, setting up a system by which we charge the other courts. I mean, we're sitting here, all the departments are talking about how tight the budget is, and we have an opportunity here where we're just paying the money. And of course, we're gonna have people that are gonna come to the court that day too, and so.
Right. This is.
maybe that's the thought, is we have to have the magistrate and the support staff no matter what.
That is one aspect of the rationale, is we're there anyways. Although obviously it creates a little bit bigger of a burden and we're there a little bit longer because we're handling these other arraignments. But it's also a little bit of a give and take, because you have those portions of the county that have their own court and they're funding their own court. And I know we field questions from commissioners sometimes that say, well, you know, why should we, are my taxpayers sort of getting double hit? They're paying taxes that are going to fund their local district court and to fund the 52nd District Court. Well, you're getting services from the 52nd District Court too. So it's kind of a, I guess, a give and a take, right?
And we do get the court equity fund, that money comes in to the county, that's from revenue from the entire community, so that kind of helps support doing it as well.
What is that?
Okay. The court equity fund,
I guess I can accept that answer.
I can send you information on it.
Does anybody else have any questions for the district court? Or are we just burning out because we've been here all night?
They explained stuff so good.
They did, that was it.
It was a nice presentation.
Circuit court kind of teed them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It was.
All
Are we
right,
the last one of the day?
Yeah.
you are our last one.
Save the best till last.
Amen. Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming in.
I gotta explain that. Thank you.
Discussion with us.
home.
Who does?
Well,
All that, every direction they have to go, they're gonna get traffic, every which way, yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
She's gonna get, Andrew's getting in that traffic.
back to our meeting, we just have a public comment. Is there anybody here that wants to address us from the public? Seeing no one, I will close public comment. Is there any other business?
Chair Markham, if I could just remind commissioners that we'll be doing this again at 1 o'clock. We do have a long day tomorrow, so please make sure to have lunch prior to the 1 o'clock meeting. Also, specifically for Commissioner Powell, make sure that you check your emails tonight, because there were some questions that were asked during previous budget hearings, the budget hearings from specifically sheriffs and the Human Resources Department. So we've received those answers, we're just doing some formatting, and we'll send them out to the Finance Committee members. If at some point you think that that should be sent out to the whole board, we'll have that discussion, but they're specific to the questions that some of you asked during those hearings. So we'll make sure that's emailed out to you.
Very good. Excellent. With that, I will adjourn the meeting at 4:20.
Which public comment or no?
Yeah.